Hello and welcome to the Accessory Podcast with Kat and Tip.
Hello.
And this week we're joined by a very special guest, the one and only Robert Shearman.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well actually. I'm excited because you're recording this on the 8th of October,
Yes.
Yeah.
and on the 9th of October my two Doctor Who books come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's exciting. It always feels a bit like a birthday.
Yeah.
I mean, it's odd because they've existed for months and I've got them here, and yet there's a certain way in which you suddenly feel, oh, it's like you're giving birth to something. So I'm actually rather excited and very, very happy. So thank you for seeing me on my pre-birthday excitement.
No, well, thank you for celebrating with us.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure. A pleasure.
Oh, thank you.
So is it? I guess it's a bit bizarre to sort of have them. You know, they go through so many drafts and being sent to the
Well,
editors and the
they're,
publishers, and
they're
then
not that many. It was odd. I mean, Jubilee went through a few at the beginning. I think because I didn't necessarily quite know who I was writing it for, and it was all very easy. I think actually I was a little bit too wary of it being a bit too dark. And then I got notes back saying, "Oh, you can, if you want to explore this further, you can." Whereas Chimes, virtually no notes at all. I mean, Chimes was so easy. I just delivered Chimes, and then I got an email back from Steve Cole, my editor, just saying, "I've never had to give no notes before, but there we are." And I thought, "Oh, good," because I was
wow.
actually at the point. Well, it was a bit. I had to go off and write a stage play. I had to go and write a Swedish adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and it was really very, very tight. So I was incredibly relieved that Chimes was and a very, very easy one. But no, it's odd. I mean, I've now sort of forgotten a lot of what's in the books because you do. Almost as a sort of act of self-preservation, you don't want to know what it is you did. It's like just in case it was awful. And I've just had in the post half an hour ago Doctor Who magazine,
Yeah.
and they've reviewed them, and they were talking
Oh.
about things in the review, and I thought I didn't know I did that. So so that's it's actually quite reassuring. Oh, that sounds quite clever. But it is odd how quickly you erase it from your brain, because at the time you're writing it, which is about a month each,
Yeah.
it's all you think about. You go out for walks, which is how I write. You just go for long walks on the common with your headphones on and not jot things down. And I become so boring to be with because it's pretty much all I'm actually, have any conversation about. And then you move on from it. So it's odd. I mean, I'm really quite grateful now that other people get to have it as their book, and it can sort of stop being mine, which is it's that odd thing. And also because it's Doctor Who. I mean, everything I've done, all these, the long 30 odd years I've been a writer, everything else gets forgotten very, very quickly, and that's natural. You write books and people talk to you about the books, but you've forgotten what was even in them. I won an award some years ago. It was really exciting. I had this email from the National Library of Singapore, and they told me that a short story I'd written, had become this international short story for them, and they wanted to fly me off to Singapore and have me do talks. And I wrote back and said, "That's really kind, but I'm really sorry, but I've never written this story. I've never heard of it." And then they said, "No, it's on page 56 of your book." And I looked, and it was, and I had written it. I genuinely forgotten, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So I
Wow.
went to Singapore, and that was great. And all the time I felt like a complete fraud because I thought I've no memory of even writing the story. It was only a year before. So there is that, but with Doctor Who, as we know, I mean, because we're fans, I mean, I never let anything from Doctor Who go. I mean, I can quote things that I watched when I was 12 years old, and I mean, I used to audio tape all the early Davison stories, and I listened to them all the time, and I can probably still now narrate the whole of Castrovalva.
Nice.
Because I can hear it in my head still. And so
Yeah.
with Doctor, you're aware that it never quite goes away. And it's that funny thing because as a writer, they already have. when I came to do the novelisations, I mean, I hadn't heard Chimes of Midnight or Jubilee I mean, certainly hadn't heard Jubilee in over 20 years.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was in it. I mean, I knew it was quite nasty, and I probably didn't quite feel good about a lot of that now. And with Chimes, I had heard it in the pandemic
Okay.
because Big Finish had this idea that we would all do a sort of thing on Twitter.
Yeah.
But apart from that, when I heard it for the first time in 15 years, then I thought, and I quite liked it actually. And then you just think, and it's gone again. So it was that odd thing that when BBC Books wrote and asked me if I would do them, I just thought, yeah, okay, but but they know far more about what they are than I do at that point.
Yeah.
And yet, as I say, with everything else in Doctor Who world, I know it back to front. I mean, I can do all the production codes of the classic series, and I can recite all the stories in order still. But my own stuff in Doctor Who, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I said I was on a thing for the Whoniverse show recently, and I said it. And I think they just thought I was being nice, but I regard all Doctor Who as canon except my stuff. Because
Why?
because I know I made it up. I think there's still a sort of childish part of me that kind of wants to believe that it's all part of the same ongoing story.
Yeah.
And I still want to think that the Mask of Mandragora is part of the same ongoing narrative that Heaven Sent is. But with Dalek or Chimes of Midnight, I just think, no, well, I just know that I know that isn't real because I did it. So all the bits I do, I don't count. But every other bit of Doctor Who I do. So it's
That's
strange.
that's so wild to me, especially because Dalek was my first introduction to the
Oh,
Daleks and the
God, was it
lore
really?
of the Daleks. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I watched that for the first time, and even now, if I need any Dalek lore, if I'm writing about the Daleks, Dalek is the first episode I'll watch, go to, write notes, and then I can get going again.
Yeah, it's funny. At the time, I probably should have guessed that that would happen, but I
Yeah.
didn't. Because that whole first series when we worked on it, I was so paranoid that we were killing the show. I just kept thinking all the time, well, it's because I've been a fan. It was 19 year. I was 19 when it got cancelled, so I was in my first year at university when Survival went out, and I was really sad for a very, very long time. And it wasn't like a daily thing where I just thought I wish Doctor Who were back, but I did. And when I began working in the BBC TV thing, eventually I would bring it up
Yeah.
because you would. And my first TV boss was Chris Chibnall, oddly enough. And I remember saying it to him because I knew he was a fan. He'd say, "Oh, I don't think we could ever dare do that because people would probably just laugh us out of a meeting." And he was right at that point anyway. I think that was it. I mean, I remember at the time I did Dalek just thinking there's so much hope here for me as well. I mean, I so much wanted the show back. When it was announced it was going to come back in the end of 2003, I was so excited by that. And people would say to me, do you think there's a chance you'll be on it? Because I've been doing my big finishes, and I said, there's not a hope. I'm not an important enough TV writer. I've not done much TV. And I was really pleased I wouldn't be on it. I just thought it'd be great that I can just watch it as a fan. And then, of course, I got the call and I was so excited to be on it. And then I spent the next year or so before it came off thinking, what if this is the final Dalek story? So in my head, it was always that sort of great fear that this would be the end note rather than, as it is for you, Kat, this sort of new beginning. And
Yeah.
it's weird because as the years have gone by, I've realised that I've met so many people because there's that huge gap that it is their first Dalek story, and I always find that really moving because, as I say, I spent so much time thinking it might be the final one,
Yeah.
and yet there's been so much since. I mean, it knocks me sideways how much Doctor Who there's been since my one.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought it might, as I say, it might all be coming crashing to an end, but no, it's wonderful.
I think
Yeah.
it's something that, I know David Tennant said in the past about when he was sort of coming on and was sort of saying, oh, what if I'm the one that ruins it? I think
Yeah,
especially when you are such a fan as you are, there's, that sort of concern of,
Yeah,
of
it's an
book.
extra unwanted pressure. I mean, you get
Mm.
it with everything you ever write. Every time I write a stage play, and it has happened. I mean, I have written a stage play that closed a theatre. I was in Rome, and they said to me, "This has sold so badly. I think we're going to have to close the whole
Oh
theatre." And they,
no.
um, so I have been responsible for many things crashing and burning, and I just thought. But with Doctor Who, you just feel that you'll never be quite forgiven for it. And also how much it would hurt
Yeah.
to have
Yeah.
something that you're really ashamed of that won't ever die. I mean, that's the thing about Doctor Who, which I find the most wonderful thing about it, but also, contributing in my small way to its vastness is also the most terrible thing about it, is that every mistake you've made is going to last long after my death. I mean, the one thing that I'll be remembered for is Dalek,
Yeah.
really. And so all the bits I don't like about Dalek are also going to be there without me, cringing at them, which is,
What
yeah.
parts about Dalek do you not like?
Oh, there are bits. I watched it again recently because rather wonderfully, the BFI did a day screening it with
Yeah.
Father's Day, and I
Yes.
sat in the audience and I interviewed on stage, and it was like being Martin Scorsese. It was amazing. And I had to sit and watch it again on this huge screen. I'd never seen it on such a big screen before, obviously, and
Yeah.
I like bits of it very much. There were just bits, just things you just think, oh. I never quite got Van Staten right, and I never thought. And Adam is. I always hated Adam, but then so does everybody else.
I was gonna say everyone joins
And
you in
yeah, it's
that.
the odd thing. I mean, look, I mean, Adam wasn't meant to be. I mean, the way I wrote Adam originally was he was the son of the Van Statens to begin with,
Yeah.
Mm.
but also he was kind of this. I wrote him as me. I thought he'd be quite funny and endearing, and he just isn't. I really. I thought people would think he was quite sympathetic and sweet. No,
No.
you watch it, you think, oh, yeah, I sort of see everyone's point.
Yeah.
He's just a pain in the ass. But yes, it's. So yes, I mean, but you're always aware of the bits that you don't feel so proud of with everything,
Yeah.
and yet you're also aware it's going to, as I say, it's going to be always there. I've been so lucky with the Doctor Who's I've done that they're well thought of. I
Absolutely.
mean, I've got so many friends who have written for Doctor Who and episodes or things that they've done that that there are ones that haven't worked and they're always
Mm.
going to be haunted by.
Mm.
But there's nothing I feel terribly ashamed of. So
But
I sort of feel I've got away with it.
I don't know how much of that is luck. I think that's maybe
I think it is luck.
I
I
I
mean,
would I would beg to differ. I would say that that's because they are genuinely brilliant pieces of Doctor Who.
well, no, thank you. I mean, and obviously, as a massive egomaniac, I will agree with you. But it is more than that because you are never. I mean, every single time anyone writes a Doctor Who, everybody, if you whatever the episode is, at the time they're making it, the people involved want it to be the best Doctor Who story ever made.
Mhm.
No one ever sets out to write Fear Her, and I don't mean that as a dig against. I don't think Fear Her's that bad
I
actually,
love
but
it
it's an
here.
episode that has become almost like the first of the new series that everybody at the time almost felt that they could have the relief of saying, "Oh well, this one's a crap one."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no one went into anything except saying this is going to be the creepiest, most moving Doctor Who story ever told, and that's always what happens. And the people, every time that you do one, the people are so inventive and creative. It's not that they couldn't do one that works. It's just not everything can. I mean, I think artistically we always know that.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's always still luck that it was good. Dalek could have been terrible. I mean, it really I think, came close to being terrible quite a few times in my drafts and also with what was going on behind the scenes.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
The fact that we actually lost the Daleks for a month would have meant that the episode was obviously not going to be quite as well remembered as it is now.
Yeah.
It's an odd thing. I mean, I've always with Doctor Who, not with other things, but with Doctor Who, always come out feeling quite lucky. that we've got away with it. And yeah, so which is in some ways one of the reasons that over the years I've become reluctant to do any more, is because I don't kind of want to push my luck too much.
Right.
It's a
Right.
really, really wonderful feeling to be one of those Doctor Who writers, partly through my own timidity, who has had quite a good hit record, and to come back and do something, and it was just. I mean, I was on the Matt Smith series for a few months, and I was doing
Yes.
so then, and I said to Stephen at one point, I just said, I don't think this is any good. And he said, I said, can I just walk away? And he said, if you want. So I did. And I just didn't want to ruin it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I didn't want an episode to go out that I thought was one of the worst of the season,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
my own ego wanted it to be one of the best.
Yeah, of
So
course.
Mm.
it's not very professional, but that's the Doctor Who fan in me talking. In other forms of writing, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
I don't mind, because you have to accept it. You know, you do your best and then you move on.
But
But
I think there is a sense of professionalism there because there's a, you know, it's a care for the show.
Yeah.
I think there are so many people that
oh
would be
yeah,
like, yeah, I'd love to write on Doctor Who, and but being able to go, I
Actually,
don't know if
this
this
isn't
is
the
what's best
best.
for the
Yeah.
show or for,
yeah. I mean,
you know,
I think I've been quite lucky again, because having done Dalek, I don't feel that I need to. If I'd never written Dalek, and then 10 years later someone said to me, "Do you want to do a Doctor Who and come on?" and it will be this cheapo one with it'll be the episode 6 one of. I imagine mine was episode 6, wasn't it? But it's going to be the one that you bury in the middle of the season, and it's not.
yeah,
And I'd have probably said, "Yeah, go on." I mean, anything, just so I've actually done one. But now I have. You can be a bit spoiled. But say, "Oh, I don't know that I do want to come back and write one of your sort of weaker, mediocre ones. I want to come." And of course, as the years go on, also you realise. I mean, one of the reasons that Dalek is allowed to be as good as it is because Russell didn't write it, and he could easily have done so. In any future season, any of the showrunners would have said, including Russell, "This is a fairly big, important episode. I think I'll write it."
Yeah.
And it's a sign of Russell's generosity, but also I think I hope he doesn't mind me saying it, but at that time, of his own showrunner naivety, that he actually allowed me to do it rather than him, because of course he'd have done it. That's what you do. I mean, you don't give up that gig. Russell spent the entire first season on the show, it always seemed to me, allowing all the guest writers to write the stuff that they really wanted to write, and he took on the filler ones. And that's entirely the wrong way around. It ought to be that, everything that is really, really sensational gets to be done by the showrunner.
yeah,
And that's one of the reasons why I think coming back can be quite hard, because I kind of want to write a showrunner type episode, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be allowed to. So yeah.
it's really interesting because it is such a, you know, a big sort of turning point, as you said. You know, obviously that series is one big arc
Yeah.
in and of itself of,
Not
as
that we
you're
really knew that at the time either, particularly. I mean, I remember the email from. I remember writing to Russell actually at one point and saying, "You wouldn't guess what they're saying online." I said, because they were at that point starting to film Aliens of London, and there was a bit of graffiti with Bad Wolf written on it. And I wrote to Russell saying, "Well, it's really funny, Doctor Who fans are thinking that might be really significant." And he said, "Well, maybe it will be." Suddenly you get emails from Russell saying, it's like, "I want you to insert the words Bad Wolf somewhere in your script." And we'd say, "Why?" And he said, "I don't know yet. I'll find out along the way." And so I never knew until I watched Bad Wolf and Parting of the Ways go out what on earth it meant. And then I thought,
Okay.
"Oh, well, that doesn't fit with mine at all."
No.
Because mine's just like an announcement of a helicopter that the Doctor and Rose weren't even there for. And I thought, "Oh, okay." So but there is a certain sense in which you just, that whole series arc thing.
Yeah.
I think Russell kind of fell in love with the idea of doing things like that, but he'd do it quite lightly,
Yes.
so it wouldn't seem. But yeah, happy memories. I mean, 20 odd years ago now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah, that seems weird. That really does seem very, very odd. Because I still think of it all as the new series because I'm that
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
But this is your entire lifetime, I imagine.
Well,
You must be early 20s, I'm guessing.
What?
late
Oh, very.
20s.
Late
Yeah.
20s.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
But even to be in your 20s, I mean, that means that inevitably, all of Doctor Who has been there since you were, I mean, I didn't watch Doctor Who myself until I was 11
yeah.
because I was scared of it. So you were watching it earlier than I was.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
watched the first episode broadcast.
yeah.
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 Not an unearthly child. You weren't.
No, no, no.
You're not.
I
You're not
wasn't
looking
like
that good for your
No.
age.
No, right. Yeah, I'm not that. No, yeah, I remember my dad calling me and going, "Your uncle, this is Doctor Who, what your uncle used to watch. I think you'll enjoy it." And I came
Yeah.
running into the room and there were Autons on the screen. I was like, "Oh, wow,
Yeah.
this is cool."
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Has your dad ever regretted that?
Yes.
Because it's funny because my parents were, who were great. I mean, I really loved my parents, but they were really not impressed that I was a Doctor Who fan at all. And because I completely fell for it. It was so sudden. I mean, it went from being something I didn't care about once whatsoever. I was too scared to watch it to my, just being, it was my only topic of conversation for
Yeah.
years. And I remember my dad picking me up from school once and told me the news gleefully that it had been, he'd said it'd been cancelled. It was during that Colin Baker season 22.
Right. Yeah.
And I was so upset. He was delighted. He said, well, at least that's gone. And
Oh.
my mum, it sounds like a terrible story about my mum, but it isn't. It's just an indication of how much they were so bemused by my liking Doctor Who. When I wrote Dalek and it went out, and I spoke to my mum on the phone the next day, and she said, "Oh yeah, we watched Doctor Who last night." She said, I said, "Yeah." She said, "It's just as awful as it was when you were a kid, isn't it?" And I said, I wrote that. She said, yes, we did notice your name on it. I said, "You wrote it, but it's still rubbish." And I said, "Yes, okay." Yeah, and so
Oh,
that
bless.
they were never. I think that they wished I could have been a bit more. I think they didn't like me being so passive. I think that was it. My dad was massively into sports.
Right.
He'd have liked me to have been into. I'm not. I'm not built that way. But yeah, there was something about the fact that I was sitting in my bedroom reading Doctor Who and the Monster of Peladon for the 14th time that
Yeah.
I think he felt was unhealthy, and I don't know why he'd have thought that.
Exactly. That's
No.
how. What else do you do? That's
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every time we went on a holiday, I'd take about 20 Target novelisations with me to read in the car, and I'd already read them before. And I'd be making notes.
Quite right. Yeah.
I'd be trying to list all the characters in order of appearance, and why? But that's what I do. Yeah. And I still have that instinct. I still have the instinct of wanting to make lists of all the Doctor Who stories.
Oh,
It's what
I've got a journal, write down all the episodes in order.
Yeah.
I like printing out the shooting scripts and annotating them at the same time as watching the
Yeah.
episode to see
think
where
that-
bits had cut and changed from.
I think that that's sensible.
great,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's a thing which I find most exciting whenever they announce a new season.
Yeah.
I get excited by the titles,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
then I memorize them. So I can right now, when I won't, I could recite An Unearthly Child all the way down to the Reality War in order, and fit in the Virgin New Adventures and BBC novels in the gaps as well, because that made me happy to learn that. And
Yeah.
I didn't consciously do it, but now when they announce a new series, when I remember when Russell announced the titles for series one for Shooting Atwa. He has them all in one go, and that was almost too much excitement for me. I was on a walk and I got up on my phone. And I spent the walk on trying to memorize them, to add them to the list I'd already got,
Yeah.
because it mattered to me enormously that I didn't lose a sense of that. Yeah, so there is something very, very comforting about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not remotely unhealthy.
No.
Not at
Of
all.
course not.
No. It's also a form of comfort. I had to have I had to have lots of dentistry done about a year ago. I hated it, root canal and stuff. And I would just sit there and in my head, and it was awful. I know they say it's not painful anymore, and I suppose it isn't, but it's really uncomfortable and
Yeah.
unpleasant to have sticking stuff in your mouth
Yeah.
and all the grinding in the gears. And I'd also just go through in my head, I know the Jolly Diet, Central Destruction, Muckaburkies, the Mariners, Aztecs, Sensibites, Renado. I'd do all that and just do it in big cycles. And then I would say, I remember reaching wherever it was at that point, and I'd reached, I think, three times now. I'd done the whole series, and I thought, this is taking too long if I can do it three times.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of minutes
Yeah.
to get,
Uh-huh.
and but it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
I mean, Doctor Who's become this sort of it's weird to to have worked on it, and also for it still to be this unashamed and wonderful comfort blanket that I always turn back to in times when I'm stressed.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
It's
lovely.
lovely.
Yeah.
yeah,
So obviously, you were a fan since you were a kid. Um,
yeah.
so
That was odd. I mean, because I didn't want to see it at all. I was so scared of the idea of it. I don't like horror. I still don't. I don't like, I write horror.
Yeah.
I write in my other life. I mean, I write lots of weird fiction, short story stuff, which is usually anthologized in horror books. I don't actually like horror myself. I can't watch a horror movie.
hmm,
I just squirm. And with Doctor Who, I remember growing up in the 70s, and I just had this assumption almost that every single thing that was scary was probably Doctor Who. So, things like those public information films you'd see, and then
yeah,
later on, I assume that's probably a scene from Doctor Who, or a ghost story for Christmas I'd catch a glimpse of, and I'd think, well, that's probably a Doctor Who clip.
Yeah.
Because in my head, Doctor Who just summed up for me absolute terror, and I
Yeah.
would and I would leave the room if my sister were watching it, and it would come on with that time tunnel and Tom Baker's face. I just couldn't cope with it. Tom
hmm,
Baker's face scared me.
Yeah.
And the reason it changed was because teacher at school when I was 10 or 11, probably 11, actually gave me some cassettes of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy
Mhm.
to listen to. And I adored them. I thought they were so funny, and I just loved it. And they weren't very good recordings, but and then a friend at school told me, "Oh, Douglas Adams wrote Doctor Who." In fact, he said Douglas Adams wrote all Doctor Who under a pseudonym. And I think he got confused because he knew that City of Death
Yeah.
was David Agnew, but he
yeah.
made it sound like every single story was another pseudonym for Douglas Adams. So I went out and bought my first Target novelisation, and I chose the crappiest cover I could because I thought, because the Image of the Fendals cover is really bad, and I thought, well, I won't. That one can't scare me
Right.
because it's just such a dreadful, because it's so obviously unfrightening. But actually, Image of the Fendal is your first Doctor Who story. That's kind of everything that you think Doctor Who is if you're really easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's somebody just it's a hiker in the woods being followed by some creature, and he just kills him because he can't move his legs. And I thought, oh, okay, this is what Doctor Who is. And it's strange. I sort of found it. It was like a sort of naughty thing, I got into Doctor Who thinking that I was being brave. And by the
Yeah.
time that the season came along, which was Castrovalva, season 19, I'd become a fan through the targets.
Okay.
And I still watched it nervously, but I'd already bought the Doctor Who program guide and memorized a lot of the titles. So it was weird. I sort of decided to become a Doctor Who fan. I mean, I don't quite understand why I did it now, but within months, I remember watching Fort of Doomsday go out and thinking, am I a fan of this? And I thought, yeah, I'm getting the mix of it. I don't like space. I still don't much like spaceship. I don't like Star Wars, for example. I just thought,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't. I don't want this. But I still
Hmm.
thought, oh, I think I know enough to know it isn't all like this. And then
Yeah.
Kinder came along, and I was scared out of my wits by Kinder. and I loved it without understanding it.
Yeah.
And certainly by the end of the season, when you get things like Earthshock, I just thought, oh well, this is it. And I joined Doctor Who Appreciation Society. I was now 12, and it became the only thought in my head until I was at least 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Wow.
Why? I mean, almost to an embarrassing degree. I mean, I think it was all I could talk about. Um, and yeah, I mean, and in a sort of annoying way, I had a fanzine at school, and I was at the same school with David Williams, and he had a
Okay.
fanzine as well, but we had rival fanzines. He was the year below me. He had one called Time Key, which was crap, and I did one called Bell, which is much, much better
Yeah.
because my dad worked in printing and he could make it look quite good. But yeah, but I still just wrote articles slagging things off because that's the go-to you have as a fan. I
Yeah.
mean, at the age of 13, I was writing about how much I hated the Graham Williams years, having never even seen any of them,
Right.
because that's what fandom was telling me I should feel, and
Right.
Yeah.
I was being passionate.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you do. I mean, I look back now and I realize it's why I never mind if anyone is just says the wrong thing to me or writes to me on Twitter or whatever and says how much they don't like my stuff. I think I'd have done the same. I'd have written to Johnny Byrne after Warriors of the Deep if I hadn't if he'd been on Twitter and said that was crap because I would have. That was the sort of gauche kid I was.
Mm.
Mm.
So yeah, so that was the big passion. I just devoted myself to it, and I kind of in my teenage years began to move more towards a love of theatre and writing.
Yeah.
I never thought that they were going to be the same thing. I never thought Doctor Who was going to be something that I ever wrote for because I never wanted to write for television, and it was the wrong medium. But yeah, but certainly up until about the time of the 18-month hiatus, I just slavishly worshipped it. I mean, it came back. I still liked it, but it's odd. I'd sort of lost some faith in it.
Right.
It
Mm.
had stopped being my happy place so much.
Yeah.
Fandom had become really unkind
Yeah.
and very alarmed. And you bought fanzines, and it was just people being very angry.
Hmm.
And I never see the point of that particularly. But so the years would go on into Sylvester, and I found myself I was enjoying the show, but I was being told I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I found all that distancing and yeah, but it was a big passionate part of my childhood.
Hmm.
So yeah,
So how did you sort of you said there you sort of found yourself finding a love of theatre and
yeah.
writing and moving into that direction. Do you remember there being a sort of specific sort of catalyst for that, or did
Yeah,
you?
I mean, sort of. I mean, I have a stammer. It's not very obvious anymore, but it was because what you do now I'm in my 50s, I found ways round it, and I have this constant thesaurus in my head, so I'm constantly changing words I'm going to say, and I'm not so embarrassed by it now because I'm old. I'm in my 50s. It doesn't matter, but in my teens, it was terrible. I mean, I was so ashamed of it, and I couldn't get words out at all, except if I found accidentally if I were performing. So that I forced myself to get up on stage at my school and overact in things, and I felt comfortable doing that. And it didn't
Mm.
occur to me for a few years that I was a really terrible actor, but I was. I mean, I was awful. But it became this passion that I would be able to go and ruin various school plays by overacting in them. And it became this thing where when I began to when I realized that that was the passion, I was writing sketches for people to perform in at school assemblies, and I began writing full-length plays when I was about 17, 18, so in my sixth form. And it's when I went to university and I auditioned for a few things and I got into them. And I wasn't a bad auditioner
Yeah.
because I was quite passionate, but that was always the best I ever was. Because part of the nature of the stammer is I find it very hard to repeat things. So in rehearsal situations, I can't, it's awful to feel that I have to do the same scene over and over again
Yeah.
because it would just emphasize how I'm losing it.
Mm.
So I began to direct, and I ran the student theatre at my university, and I began writing plays. And while I was still a student, I got again lucky. I began winning a couple of international awards and things, so that I won the World Drama Trust Award when I was in my final year, and a play I wrote at university but only went out professionally afterwards, won the Sunday Times Playwriting Award. And I suddenly found that as I was graduating, and I'd expected to go into academia,
Mm.
lecturing upon my big passion for Renaissance drama, because that's what I love.
Yeah.
You know, I love Jacobean tragedies and stuff. But instead, I found that the local regional rep, the Northcott in Exeter, applied to the Arts Council to see whether or not I could be writer in residence based upon
Wow.
the fact I was now writing stage plays. And I was told by the artistic director, a lovely chap called John Durnin, he said to me, "We won't get it." He said, "People get these jobs in their 40s, but
Right.
let's just go up for it." And we got it. So I came out of university and I suddenly found I had an office in a theatre for the next 18 months, and I had to write three main house shows for them in that time. I wrote four in the end,
Oh,
and I just was massively spoilt, and I began writing other plays for other regional reps, and Alan Ayckbourn, who I am still a massive fan of. I wrote my dissertation on Alan Ayckbourn at university, and his now wife saw one of my plays, and very, very dark comedy. But Alan invited me up to Scarborough, and I was 23 at this point, and he commissioned my first his first play commission, for me. I wrote for Alan, I think, every year for the next 7 years. I mean, Alan was directing I was being directed by Alan Ayckbourn. So over my 20s, I just found I was incredibly bizarre position where I was just regularly getting theatre commissions, and I
Mm.
was not bad at them, but I wasn't great. I mean, to be honest, I was too young.
right.
And I wrote some decent plays. And in fact, in fact, the first play I wrote for Oakbourne is currently touring Croatia. And I think it's being revived next year as well here in Britain. And that one does okay.
Mm.
And it's quite good. But I wrote it when I was 24,
Mm.
and it feels very young, but it's all right. And other plays of mine get revived. But I didn't really know. I think I had a lot of talent, but it was a bit wayward. So I wrote an awful lot of crap and some good stuff around it.
Yeah.
And the good stuff kept me going.
Mhm.
And yeah, I just found that my 20s was spent just writing theatre. That's all I really cared about, and I began drifting into BBC radio, and from that into TV stuff in
Okay.
my early 30s. But yeah. But
Mm.
yes, it was odd. I mean, it sort of took over my life, and it was partly, as I say, because I couldn't act. I,
Right.
I went to National Youth Theatre. I tried National Youth Theatre, and the final audition they gave me, said to me, "Look, we could let you in, but you're not very good." They said you're very enthusiastic, but actually the problem is that you have no future. You just have no future. You won't be good enough.
Oh,
And I said, okay. And I wasn't broken-hearted, actually. I
no.
was 18, and I thought, yeah, kind of getting that impression myself.
Right.
But I still loved the performance. So,
Mm.
Mm.
and I do that now. I go around and I perform my short stories a lot,
Mm.
and I do them quite well. But I couldn't do it if I was doing them regularly. I'd be awful. But I can show off on stage a bit now,
Right.
and it's only me doing it, so I'm not ruining anyone else's performance by my doing it. It sounds like a show off thing. I was in Brazil a few years ago, and there was a sort of thing where, for some reason, I was having to perform a short story to an audience, and they'd also hired this really well-known tragedian actor who could only speak Portuguese. And I'd read a bit of the story, then he'd read a bit, and we was every time there was a break between us, there was this experimental guitar thing going on from someone who was improvising. The whole thing about 2.5 hours this entire evening, and I would do my reading, and I'd be silly and over the top and wave my arms off, and I'd try and be getting jokes, and
Yeah.
it would cut to this other actor, and he would do it as if it were a big tragedy, which is not how I was doing it. So we would constantly be exchanging looks across the stage, and he'd be looking really puzzled because he couldn't understand what I was saying. I couldn't understand what he was saying. But what we knew was we were doing the same text, but we just didn't agree on how it should be performed. In the middle, there was this from a. It was a very odd experience.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd share that.
No.
That's no, that's. But I mean, that does lead me to a question about sort of themes and tone within your work, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of your stuff sort of does blend sort of horror and sort of darker themes and tragedy with comedy and absurdism,
Yeah.
and how much of that is sort of a conscious choice when or is that just how you write?
Suppose it's how I write. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's odd. I always think I'm writing a comedy, and that's my natural. I mean, that's where I wrote for Eightborn. I mean, I always think I'm a comedy writer, but my comedy is quite dark, and I like pushing at it and seeing when it stops being funny.
Mm.
I mean, the first success play I had, that Sunday Times Playwriting Award thing, which is called Easy Laughter, is all about that. It's about, it's set at a family Christmas. I love writing about Christmas. Um, but the family is unraveling over Christmas, but they call it Christide, and they have these weird rituals around it, and it starts to dawn on the audience. Hopefully, not until about Act Two, but and yeah, and they're bullying the women very badly in the play, and you begin to realise that actually this is a different world, and it's a world in which the Holocaust was successful, and they're actually celebrating the death of the Jews, and it's awful, and it stays being funny. In fact, the idea of the play is because we would always do it in traverse. So the audience would be facing the audience. And it was about seeing when the audience began getting cross with other members of the audience who hadn't worked out what the play was about yet, and being really angry with them in the interval. And that's what I enjoy doing. It's that idea of I wanted to write comedy where you just at one point say, I think this has stopped being funny. And yet they're still doing the jokes. Most of the time, the thing that I always find a bit annoying about when comedies do that is when suddenly you rein in the jokes
Yeah.
as if you're suddenly saying, aha, but now I've revealed it's serious. I'm going to stop trying to be funny to say, oh, you see, it was just a pretense. Whereas I mean, that's why I love Chekhov so much, and Ibsen as well, is that the darker these things get, and Ibsen is not as funny as Chekhov by any means, but he's
No.
still funny. You begin, however unpleasant what you're watching gets, the characters don't know that as far as we're concerned, that the tone has changed.
Yeah.
So they're still behaving in the same way, and that's what I think is fun. So with Doctor Who, I mean, when I did my first Doctor Who, The Holy Terror, which I wrote as a quite broad comedy, and then it becomes really quite nasty. I thought that was quite fun. I think that partly because it was my reaction to getting told I had to put a shape-shifting penguin in it. So I thought, well, that's immediately rather tipping my hand into the idea of I have to write this as a comedy.
Yeah.
I will, but I still want it to be a bit more vicious. So it was more of a surprise to people when Holy Terror becomes this quite unpleasant. Yeah, I've not heard Holy Terror in a long time. But I do know it gets quite nasty.
Yeah.
Probably a bit too nasty, really. But yeah, so I think I like the way that comedy subverts. That comedy is there in part. People feel reassured by comedy, but that isn't really what comedy does. Comedy is about upsetting your expectations.
Yeah.
That's why you usually laugh, is because you're not expecting that to be what happens next.
Yeah.
And that means you can use it as a weapon. So people feel, oh, this is great. I'm really relaxing. I'm having a really nice time. I'm laughing along. And then you think, yeah, but it's a dangerous, it's a two-edged sword comedy.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, Chimes of Midnight, I think, is just a comedy, really. I mean, I had to write it so fast, the original audio play. I had to write a play for Eightborn at the same time.
Mm.
And I really only had a week or so to write Chimes in. So I wrote it pretty much the same way I'd write a stage play,
Yeah.
which I think is a bit of a giveaway. Is, it's just a few rooms and it's just characters talking on and on and on. But yeah, I mean, I thought, well, I'll just write it the same way. So I wrote it comedically,
Yeah.
and everyone reacts to the deaths in Chimes as if it's funny,
Mm.
and that's what makes it horrible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was told, again, I was really thrown at the time. I didn't expect people to like Chimes very much when it came out, but what seems to get people going when they talk to me about it is the fact that they find it scary. And I always thought that I was trying to undercut the scares, but as the years go by, I mean, when I had to hear it again so many times to write a novel,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, what makes it unnerving is the fact that no one's reacting in the
In the
right
correct
way.
manner. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why I like, and I use that so much more now when I'm writing my short stories. I love people not having quite the right responses to things, and that's unsettling.
Yeah.
People reacting to death with a shrug is it's amusing, but also it's really uncanny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so Chimes is kind of full of that,
Mm.
really.
It's that
Absolutely.
slight sort of detachment from
Reality.
reality. It's
Yeah.
the sort
Yeah.
of the not quite right, as you say. It's unsettling,
Well,
that
it's the way
uncanniness.
that, I mean, Doctor Who is usually melodrama. I mean, Doctor
Hmm.
Who loves people having, big reactions to the end of the world. And I think there's something quite, I don't know, a little bit strange about people just not appearing really to mind that we're all damned
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they're so used to it. If you're doing Jubilee, I mean, what's awful about Jubilee is that everyone's in that society just takes it as normal
Yeah.
because that's what we do. I mean, that is what's. I mean, not to be too political, but that's it is that sense that where you get to is that you start accepting things that you never thought you would accept.
Yeah.
And the whole point about the Doctor is he comes in, or she comes in, and can see through that and can just say, how can you be allowing this to be your status quo? And they say, oh well, we've just got used to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
that's how all the societies in Doctor Who get toppled so fast, is because he exposes that you shouldn't be taxing people to death in this way or whatever in the Sunmakers.
Mm.
But that's it. I think that comedy is generally about seeing a different sort of world, even if it's like 40 Tales or whatever. You're seeing a heightened version of something which you just feel, well, this isn't the way that any of this should work.
Hmm.
And we're on the outside seeing it that way, and that makes us also hopefully look at what we're going through and saying,
Mm.
well, are we doing the same thing all the time? I mean, because I think we are, but yes, that's particularly at the moment.
Yeah.
Mm. That's interesting though, because there's a lot of you spoke there quite a lot about sort of subversion and kind of second guessing what maybe an audience's expectations are, or I mean, with
Yeah,
Jubilee, that's that feels to me almost like a maybe the antithesis of what you would expect somebody to do with, okay, you can write a Dalek story,
Yeah.
because it's playing with some quite like really interesting sort of nuanced themes of nationalism and like the dark sides of like
yeah,
historical celebrations. And I know you've spoken a little bit about how it's obviously Daleks are very much parallels to the Nazis, and the sort of odd enjoyment that we have, and how it
Yeah, I
kind
mean,
of became parodied in popular culture. And
there was so many contexts at the time for it. I mean, we were also opening the 40th anniversary of Doctor Who, a big finish with, it's 2003. It was all, you know, Doctor Who 40 years. And I just thought, I never really trust anniversaries, particularly. I don't trust nostalgia very much. I mean, I
mm,
adore nostalgia, but I also think it's dangerous. So the idea of saying, okay, we're starting the anniversary year with a big it's because the Jubilee is Doctor Who fans celebrating Doctor Who. I mean that's what I was talking about in a way, and I was saying maybe we should just spoil our fun a bit. Um, I don't know. It's an odd thing. I just feel that. I mean, I think Jubilee probably goes too far. I mean, I think the book is quite different because, well, it had to be. So when BBC Books asked me to write Jubilee, I don't think they'd actually heard it. I
Right.
think they just knew it was popular. And I said to Steve Cole, the editor, I said, but I don't remember it very well, but I do know that I kill a lot of dwarves and that there's some decapitation. He said, yeah, we probably shouldn't be doing that. I said, no,
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 we should.
I don't think that's going to fit anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, it came out of also, I was writing at the time for Chris Chibnall, a show called Born and Bred, which was set in the 1950s, which is a very, very nostalgic show
mm.
where everybody was nice. I mean, everybody was insufferably nice in this show. And I wanted to subvert that. I mean, I put a Nazi in Born and Bred before they sacked me. I didn't do another episode, but
Were those
'cause
two
it
things
wasn't.
related,
Yeah.
or?
No, I mean, I think I got the show wrong. I mean, it
Right.
was made and broadcast. It's just, I mean, Born and Bred was funny because it was such a sort of happy show in which all the lead members were recognizable, established character actors, and it had this theme which was da 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 da. After my one, they had to do da 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 because it ended up on the grave. I mean, it was so miserable, my one. But that's because I thought it was funny to do that.
Yeah.
And I wrote Jubilee while I was writing my Born and Bred, and it was in some ways a reaction against that nostalgia I saw in Born and Bred.
Mm,
So, and I because I love revenge tragedy, I also thought, well, let's do a big Grand Guignol thing. Let's try and do Duchess of Malfi meets Doctor Who and have people
mm,
having their heads cut off and stuff. That I think that doesn't fit now. It actually almost sort of trivializes what Jubilee was about. So when I wrote the novel, I tried to take out that element of it and make it seem a bit more real and less cartoony. But
mm.
yeah, but yes, it came. It sounds so. Every time I read an interview about Jubilee, and I've read a few, and where they talk about, well, I talk about how it's a reaction to the fact that Daleks were doing Kit Kat ads and things, and that's true. But it also makes me just sound like I'm just like I'm telling people off for enjoying Daleks, and I enjoy Daleks. I mean, I would. I'm a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I just wanted to try and do something a bit different. I wanted to try and make the Dalek a character
Yeah.
because that's what we really hadn't had. And it all came about accidentally because Gary Russell asked me to originally to do a webcast story. It's what real time became.
Right.
So it's going to be 6 10-minute episodes for cartoon. He wanted me to
Right.
do a Dalek story. And my immediate go-to was I thought, well, that's not an awful lot of room.
Mm.
I'll just put one in it. And as
Yeah.
soon as okay, I've got a story for one Dalek,
Yeah.
inevitably, I mean, I said, oh, I'll put him in the Tower of London. And I began thinking about it, and it became this thing where I was examining him more. And I wasn't expecting that. I think if I'd just been told originally to go away and write a four-part Dalek story, I might have easily have done a big army of Daleks, and it would have been quite trad.
Yeah.
But Jubilee became almost accidentally because I then turned it into a bigger thing instead.
Mm.
This thing which felt more like a character examination.
Mm.
And as soon as you start examining it, of course, it becomes interesting because then you have to subvert it. There's no point in doing a Dalek on its own without actually making it analyze and make it broadly sympathetic in a strange, complex way. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it kind of wrote itself, Jubilee, in a way.
That's
Maybe a
really
bit too
interesting.
much. I do think the story really unravels. Again, which I've changed a lot for the book, but I think episode 4 of Jubilee is it's a real mess. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I just have to go back to Born and Bred. So I'm trying to make all the story, and the paradox makes no sense anyway. And I'm not very good at time paradoxes, which is a shame because I do keep on writing them.
Yeah.
The same problem with Chimes of Midnight. I mean, that makes no sense either. So you have to, so doing the book versions, you think, oh, I better try and make this work now. So Chimes is not quite the same either. But with
Mm.
Jubilee, I just thought, yeah, I need to look at this again and try and make this better. And yet, at the same time, you know that for over 20 years, people have really liked it and
Hmm.
maybe overpraised it. So you don't want them also to suddenly think, oh my God, he's right, it was rubbish. And he still hasn't solved it. So everything, So
Yeah.
I mean, it was tricky.
It was interesting to see where the stories went, especially because writing for audio is going to translate so differently when you adapt it for a novelisation anyway.
Yeah,
So after listening to, because I listened to Chimes again before I read the novel, and I was really interested and wrote down at points where you were going to go, especially for kind of the transitions between the Doctor and then going through to the more character based within each room, and how slowly they start to bleed through and become together.
right.
So I was
Mm.
really interested to see how you were going to go about that and what else you would add into it. And I felt
Yeah.
that what you did add to it, it did ground the story a lot more, and I was really like I read it in one sitting. I was so
Oh, yeah,
engaged.
bless you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, no,
It's
it
quite
was great. I
quite
think
long as well. I mean, it's longer than Jubilee by about 15,000 words. It does go on a bit, Chimes,
I
but it
think
was,
it took me 8 hours, but it was a good eight
yeah. Well,
hours.
thank you very much. No, it was odd. I mean, I wanted to make. I think the problem also is that because they're audio plays, they're not very visual. I mean, that
Yeah,
sounds
Hmm.
obvious, but some audio plays are quite visual. I mean, I think
yeah,
that I'm not very visual. I mean, I have no. I have aphantasia,
okay.
which is very common actually. It's
Mm.
not like it's a disease, but I have no visual memory. I have nothing in here
Mm.
that has pictures. I just see blackness and words mostly, but I don't, so I don't know what things look like once I stop looking at them for very long. I
Mm.
don't
Mm.
hold on to that. So when I write dramas, I tend not to make them very visual. And if I'm writing a short story, for example, I tend not to describe characters very much because I don't really care what they look like that much.
Mm.
And also, I quite like the idea that as you're reading it, that it's like an everyman thing. I don't want to, but I'm never going to be sort of writer who spends 2 pages describing some curtains because I can't see the curtains,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I don't really care. But it means that as a result, when you write the audio dramas, when I do, Chimes in particular is it's just set in a few rooms.
yeah,
And that's fine, but it's not what you'd expect from a novel, and especially not a Doctor Who
no,
novel.
Mm.
For me, part of the trick was trying to sort of say, well, how can I turn this into a more visual experience? How can I get a bit more visual horror into
hmm,
it? So I came up with the idea early on about, I thought, well, I'd quite like to it'd be quite fun if Charlie gets her eye trapped in a keyhole.
yeah,
Because that's horrible. And
yeah,
I thought, what? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, at some point they should try and go upstairs, shouldn't they?
hmm,
So I began trying to filter ways of saying, how can I get more? And once you start doing that, and once you start saying things like, well, I like the image of if everyone's coming back to life, I think that so should the turkey.
that
And then I
was
think it'd be
that was
fun if the
incredible to
turkey
read.
starts to. I mean, the turkey's my favorite character.
Yeah,
And and I love it that he just starts running up the walls of the kitchen. You have to get
yeah,
him down on the handle. And again, it's suddenly something that you could never do on audio.
no,
Yeah.
And if you tried, it would just be eggy.
hmm,
But you suddenly feel, okay, I've got the basis for something here in this script, but let's just find ways of saying, if this had to now be, if I could just bin the script and just start over in a different medium, you wouldn't be holding yourself back. So I kept on sort of, when I was writing Chimes in particular, I'd go for long walks and I'd hear the audio, but then I would try and write the scene again without access to the script.
Yeah.
And I'd go back in later and I'd say, oh, actually, there were some really good things and you should retain them. And then I'd feed maybe some of the stuff back in.
Yeah.
But I was finding ways of just saying, let's just write this more interestingly. And yet it's still quite claustrophobic. It's still within those rooms. I didn't want to suddenly open it up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think I'd made a big mistake from the novelisation. I did a Dalek a few years ago where it's difficult because it was 45 minutes long, the episode, obviously, and you've turned it into a novel.
Yeah.
And I thought one way of doing that would be to lean into my short story love, and I would tell background stories that were quite revelatory about about the minor characters. And what people said to me afterwards, and I take their point, was they said that was fun, but it just holds up the action.
Yeah.
It just means, and also there's not much room there for the Doctor anymore. And I don't dislike that. And I look back at the book and say, well, that's what it was. But I really wanted in Chimes and Jubilee to feel that the expansions were about them and involving them.
Yeah.
And they don't make you feel like you're going backwards.
No.
So that there are lots of ghost stories in Chimes. Ghost stories, I hope, don't feel like they're backstories. They're things that they're currently going through themselves, and they all are clues for something about what's going on anyway.
Yeah.
And they're all different clues. So that there's the maid who keeps on seeing different ghost versions of herself.
Yeah.
That's actually she's just seeing the fact that she's been that she's seeing all the imprints of all the other maids as she's lapping in a time loop. And then you've got the story about the chauffeur, and he's got basically an understanding that actually this is going on for infinity, and it's so you've got. So I'm hoping it doesn't feel like you're going backwards when you you read these things. But
No,
it's
Not
it
at all.
doesn't. No. It added to it.
Well, thank you. I mean, again, and also the hard thing is that Chimes it's strange. Chimes is popular.
Yeah.
I mean, I never thought it was going to be when I wrote it originally. I always thought it was going to be. I thought it was a bit rushed, and I dreaded Big Finish's response when they got the script saying, "Well, we can't do this. I mean, this doesn't make any sense, and you've rushed it." But it came out. It went down well, and in that way that Doctor Who can sometimes do, and does with the TV episodes as well sometimes. Once you start to accept that a story has been popular, it becomes part of its history that it's popular. So Chimes of Midnight has, over the last 20 something years, acquired a reputation now of being really good,
Yeah.
which means that almost it's like a sort of a fait accompli. People go into it saying, "Oh, well, this is one of the great ones,"
Yeah.
and you might counter that, but it just means that you don't question it very much. And I think my big fear coming to write the novel of it was that people would just, people who had decided that they already loved Chimes of Midnight would be crushed by how either this was exactly the same as it already had, which would be boring, or it was different to what they already had, which would be frustrating. So you're caught in the middle, trying to make it feel fresh and different, and at the same time not make people feel that you've taken away what they already loved. I mean, I got it from Dalek. I got people writing to me saying you've cut out a few of my favourite lines, and I'd think, I'm sorry, I didn't like them very much. And I know this will happen with Chimes. I mean, and Jubilee. I mean, I was quite fond in Jubilee of the stuff involving the American Prime Minister, because I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah.
And as I wrote the novel, I thought I can't find any way of inserting this without it losing the action at the pace. So I thought, oh well, yeah, well, they have to go.
Yeah.
And I found, oh, can I not? No. I'm thinking, there's a way of inserting us. No,
No.
so you end up just cutting stuff
Yeah.
Yeah.
because other things take over instead. You
Yeah.
think, oh, all right, but
Killing your
yeah,
darlings, isn't it?
yeah, and you also, but at the same time, it's kind of not because it still exists. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I'm going to say to people who complain to me about favourite bits of Chimes of Midnight no longer being there. I'll say, you've still got it on Spotify. It's
Yeah.
fine. You can go listen to that. But
Mm.
that wasn't going to work so well in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's having the freedom to say, I really want this story to work again.
Hmm.
As if you read it for the first time, you wouldn't be making allowances saying, oh, this was a really popular audio drama. What I
Yeah.
really like from both of the novels is that when you read them, you don't realise that they came from audio at all.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that people could read Chimes and Jubilee first
Yeah.
before they ever hear the audios and never question it or never make allowances in the way that even with the novelisations of some of the TV episodes, occasionally you read them and you think, well, they're doing that because that was what was on the telly, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't in a book.
Yeah.
And because when you adapt stuff from the telly, there's everybody else is involved. There were things I really wanted to change in dialogue.
Mm.
Just wanted to change entire bits of the story. And no one said to me no, but they did say to me before I went in, maybe don't
Yeah.
make it so it's just completely different because
Yeah.
that's not what, because there are rights issues and it's,
Okay.
and you don't own it. You don't own
Yeah.
Darling. You are somebody who, whereas I do own Chimes of Midnight and Jubilee.
Yeah.
I mean, even, because it's old Big Finish, at that stage, well, I think if you write for Big Finish now, Big Finish has a different copyright level. But I actually owned the scripts of those early audios, and I thought, yeah, do I want with them?
Yeah.
Hmm.
No one can really turn around and say, well, you mustn't do that, which is why I had this moment in Chimes of Midnight, not to spoil it for people who are listening, but I came to the bit where you reveal who the murderer is.
Hmm.
And I ended the chapter by having a doctor say, well, that's nonsense. That's not who it is. And I'll now tell you who it really is. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just change the ending of, I'm changing who the murderer is, am I? So fine, okay, I did that because I thought that'd be quite funny. And I
Uh-huh.
thought
Yeah.
that when you read it, especially if you've heard the audio and the resolution of Chimes is not its strength, to be honest. I just thought, well, let's make it more about this young girl's imagination and let's
Hmm.
make it more about that being the purpose of it,
Yeah.
as opposed to being something about a house that comes alive because it's gone through a time loop.
Yeah, but
I
that
mean,
was still really good. That was one of when I
I don't
listened
mind the
to it the
house
first time.
believing. I
Yeah.
just thought I kind of like to imagine that there's actually
More.
more to that
Mm.
going on. That the
Yeah.
house might believe it, but that's because it's actually someone else's idea. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, but it's that funny thing where I would be writing both of the books and I'd have scraps of dialogue that I'd copied out that I
Mm.
thought were important, and I'd come to write them and I'd think, what if they don't say that? What if they say the opposite?
Yeah.
Mm.
Because that's what writing an art is. I mean, that's what you do from. I mean, I know, and obviously, Kat, I know that you do this as well with what you do. So you go into a rehearsal situation and you say, well, what if at this moment Hedda Gabler doesn't do the usual reaction?
Yeah.
How does it change the scene if maybe we have it's not the expected response to the line?
Yeah.
So I would be doing the dialogue that way and saying, oh, I would really like it maybe if the doctor doesn't just say that.
Hmm.
It'd be nice if he
Mm.
just said the opposite.
Yeah.
Maybe he could be nicer now than he is in my audio. Maybe he could be angry now than he is at this point. And you start suddenly. I got into a bit of a state with Jubilee where I suddenly made a doctor very, very cross for a while, which I then changed with Evelyn. He just got a bit pissed off with her in my book because he wasn't in the audio, and I just thought, I think you'd be more pissed off,
Yeah.
and it's annoying that you're taking this so comfortably.
Yeah.
So you start arguing with the characters more that you wrote 25 years ago. You say, no, you're making it too easy.
Hmm.
Why are the characters having such an easy response to things that they ought to be angry about?
Yeah.
You know. And I
That's really
built more
interesting.
into the sort of the love relationship between Charlie and the Doctor that was in Chimes, because
Yeah.
Scherzo, which
Hmm.
I wrote a couple of years after Chimes, is all about that. And I thought, I'll never novelize Scherzo, I imagine. I think I don't imagine I'll be novelising any of the others either. But I thought, I'd like there to be a bit more of a kick here.
Hmm.
Mm.
So you try and deepen and darken. I mean, I have Evelyn at the beginning of Jubilee in the book saying, well, I'm off
Yeah.
because it's Evelyn's first and maybe only book. And I just
Yeah.
thought, I want this to feel like it's an important story for Evelyn as opposed
Hmm.
to just being another adventure when we won't see the other ones anyway, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like in the old days when Doomsday Weapon came out and Malcolm Hulke had no idea that there would be ever Terror of the Autons introducing Joe, or so he makes that her introductory story because you think, well, let's give it some weight. I mean, let's make
Yeah.
that character feel like this is a big thing for them.
Yeah.
So I tried the same sort of thing. It'll probably annoy people.
But like you say, the originals are still there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's when you start saying, "Am I only doing this because it's what was already there?" It's I got somebody got cross with me because in Dalek it was no longer 2012. I,
yes.
but I said to them, but when we did 2012 in the episode, it was because it was in the future.
Yeah.
And we didn't think in 2012 was to be making Doctor Who. I mean, hey, we've so long ago past that.
Yeah.
To do it in 2012 now feels silly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Let's just simply not mention the year. And he said, no, but that means it's not. I said, no, it isn't set in 2012 anymore. The novelisation set. I don't ruin it by saying it's now 2036 because that would just annoy even more people. But I did think, let's, you always write certain things at certain points for a contextual reason. And
Hmm.
once the context goes, let it go as well. You don't,
Absolutely.
it's, I always get bothered by 10th Planet because it's 1986.
Uh-huh.
And I was, oh, why did you have to say what the year was?
Yeah.
And then it means, years later you're watching Attack of the Cybermen go out and it's 85. Well, we better time it. It shouldn't have mattered. If you were writing 10th Planet as a novel now, you would just say, well, it's set in the year 2140
Hmm.
because that's in the future.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm just rambling. But it's about sort of, there is a certain joy in going back to a story you wrote 20 odd years ago and just saying, let's just do it as if you were writing it now, as
Yeah.
opposed to consciously adapting what you did when you were a much younger writer.
Do you find yourself, because they are so, but I mean, all of your Doctor Who stuff is like very well regarded. Did you
Yeah,
find?
be nice. I mean, I'm so grateful for people actually always being very kind about it because I think it's a lot more variable than they do. But anyway, sorry, yes.
Did you find yourself sort of slightly apprehensive going into this? That like did
Yeah.
you did you buy into like almost like your own hype of being like, I know you were saying there
Yeah,
like,
a
oh, Chimes
bit.
of Midnight's one of the good ones. Did you feel a bit
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
oh,
I've always felt rather guilty about Chimes of Midnight though, because I never liked it at the time.
mm,
Over the years, I've grown to like it because other people do so much. And I was told I had to like it. I remember there's an interview I did for Big Finish did a long out of print book where we're all interviewed about it's a sort of guide to all the audios with interviews. And everyone's told to be very, very honest. And I read the book, and everyone about their audios is saying how much they like them. And it comes to all of mine, I'm just saying, oh, it's rubbish. In Chimes of Midnight, which I am proud of, I spend the entire interview saying why it doesn't work for me.
Right.
And it just feels like it's a real downer when you read it. You think, oh, come on. I mean, it's quite good. I mean, actually, bits of it are quite funny. And actually, and I do like, I find Chimes quite moving now. And I can unashamedly, I think it is unashamed because I don't remember writing it very well. It's only a week
Yeah.
back in the year 2000 when I wrote it.
Yeah.
So I can look back at it now and say, you know what, I think that's actually, I think this works. And I think that the cliffhangers are really exciting.
Yeah.
I go around and listen to it before writing it a few times on my long walks along the Thames path, which is what I like to do as a hobby. And I found myself quite teary at bits. I think actually I'm really proud I wrote this.
Good.
Mm.
And that's a danger because at that point you then say, well, I don't want to come in now and ruin it.
Right.
And there's a part of you which just feels. I mean, it was tricky when BBC Books wrote to me originally. They wrote and said it was rather funny actually. I mean, in my head, this is what happened. It may not be if I check the emails. They went and said, "Hello, are you aware that you wrote an audio called Jubilee and it's quite popular?" And I thought, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Because I remember. They said, "Would you like to novelize it?" And I wrote back, and I wrote to Steve Cole, as I say, and I said, "I just think, I mean, yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to work as it is. And I'm not
Mm.
sure what to do with it."
Right.
And I said to him, oh, "Chimes of Midnight is better regarded, but it hasn't got a Dalek in it, which is what presumably is what they were going for."
Right.
And Steve said, I agree, and I think that, the decapitations and the maybe Chimes would be better. I said, yeah, but a part of me at the same time thought, I don't want to do Chimes at Midnight. I'm really scared of doing Chimes because Chimes is the one that I particularly now don't understand its success, and I don't want to ruin it.
Mhm.
And when they came back and they said, no, they still want Jubilee, I said, oh, okay. And then they said, and we also now want Chimes.
Oh.
And I was also delighted because there's a massive ego part which says, oh, I get to
Two
do
now.
two.
Yeah.
That's actually, and that's tight because I had to get them both at the same time. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you also think, I I like what that says. I obviously I do have a bit of a big head because I also thought I love the fact that when they announced that it's going to be that they've got this whole new range and it's entirely by me
Yeah.
makes me really happy. But yeah, but Jubilee felt immediately when I got that I knew I had to. It was going to be a reinvention where I felt I could go back and correct
Yeah.
a lot of where I thought the audio hadn't worked, where I got
Mm.
it wrong, where I just overplayed my hand a bit. With Chimes, I went in really nervously, actually, just thinking, what if I just make this disappointing? And so I did Chimes second. I wrote it in March this year, I think, over the March. Yeah, I think I wrote it all in March. And I wrote Jubilee by about November, December. And I spent the next couple of months doing nothing but listening and reading Edwardian ghost stories and things to try and get a sense of how I could maybe try and be bolder with it. I thought if I could
Mm.
make Chimes feel like it's properly in that tradition
Mm.
of writing, so it's not the audio anymore, it's something very different. If I could make this into a nice Edwardian horror story, even though the original audio isn't particularly, because it's not any ghosts in Chimes. I mean, it has the feel of a ghost story, whether or no ghosts. And I thought, well, I'm going to put some ghosts in. I want to actually now see if I can run with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went into Chimes therefore feeling that I had some more purpose with it than simply translating it into book form.
Okay.
And I think I'm prouder of Chimes now than I was of the audio in a funny way. And I think I'm probably prouder of it than I am Jubilee, which feels like it's sort of remedial work, whereas Chimes feels like it's kind of trying to be quite clever and reinventing. So, well, again, we'll just see how it goes down. I'm sort of half expecting that people might be disappointed, but at the same time, I'm also hopeful that people will like it a lot, because that's what you always hope.
Hmm.
And I
Absolutely.
think I think it's quite good, Chimes. I flicked back through it. I mean, I have it here. I received it a few days ago, and
Oh.
Oh,
you do
really?
the thing where you just flick through the book and you
Yeah.
say, it's insane. that's quite good. And
Yeah.
normally when I get a book of mine, I flick through, I think, oh, that bit's not very good. Why did you write that? And you could go, oh, it's in print now. The time that I could have corrected it is over.
Is
It's already.
over.
But I think Chimes, yeah, I mean, I flick through them both and feel quite happy with them.
I mean,
So
we've both read Chimes.
Yeah.
You very kindly
no,
sent
hey,
us a little preview copy.
Yeah.
I'm delighted to have. Actually, it means it's selfish in a way. I just wanted someone else to have read it. It's that funny thing that at this stage now, I just feel. I was saying to friends for ages, "Would you like to have a PDF?" And they'd say, "No, it's all right. I mean, we'll just wait." And I said, "I've got it here." I said, "No, it doesn't matter." And I said, "Yeah, I'd like someone to have read it
Yeah.
because
No.
it makes it feel real if someone else has read it."
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
problem with all of these things is that you write them. I've just written a short story this week that has to be is going in an American book, and no one yet has read it. Not even the editors. I mean, it's existed now for a few days.
Yeah.
No one has read it. My wife, it's not her fault. I've not sent it to her either, but I don't want her to always have to be reading my stuff.
Yeah.
But until someone reads it, I don't really believe it's there. It's
Right.
like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there
Yeah.
to hear it.
Yeah.
They didn't really make a noise. And at the moment, Chimes and Jubilee feel a bit like they haven't really been written because no one has actually read the actual hard copies. So your reading them does make me feel a little bit like they actually exist.
Well, I'm ready for everyone to read them so I can talk about them for hours and hours and hours. I've got everything
That's
ready to
really
go.
kind. And again, it must mean, but also a pressure on you because, I know it would have been awful, because you invited me to do the podcast. And at that point, I said, "Do you want to read Chimes?" And you could have read it and just said, "Oh, this isn't very good."
Yeah.
And that
What am
would
I
have
going to say
been,
now?
yeah, well, I'm sure you'd have been very, very polite and discreet the way that people are. But it's that awful thing we just think, oh, well, let's just talk about the audio. I quite
Yeah.
enjoyed that.
I mean,
Whatever.
Dalek's good, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
Yeah. Yeah. So why have you read the Maltese Penguin as a book? Yeah. Yeah.
but no, it's brilliant, really, really good. I've not got Jubilee is. I mean, I think it's coming tomorrow. I think it's turning up
Yeah,
tomorrow.
I mean,
Tomorrow,
what's
So
so exciting is that we are literally doing this on the day before
Yeah.
yeah, it's like Christmas
it's
Eve.
It
actually
is,
out.
yeah.
And so it becomes real tomorrow morning, which is it's a really nice feeling actually,
Yeah.
because it was kind of a stress doing them back to back. I mean, it was very, very, yeah, it was a very, very enjoyable process, and it was to do Doctor Who again after quite a few years. No, and I don't quite count doing Dalek the novelization because that felt like it was just doing Dalek again. But
Right.
I really wanted this to feel like I was doing two new Doctor Who stories, at least in my head.
Yeah.
So I was having fun just trying to get back into the spirit of doing Doctor Who because it's been a long time, and it was. But I'm quite glad it's over
Yeah.
because it was because again, as I said earlier on, you just know that if you get it wrong with Doctor Who, it stays. It's there forever. And the books will go out of print, and because books do, but they still kind of will exist, and people will still be sharing them. And in the year 2053, when I'm 83 years old, and then someone will come along and say, "Oh, we want to now bring them out again, but as an audio book with a hologram," and you'll say, "Fine." And I think is at the moment, that because BBC Audio are just now finishing off the range of novelizations from the classic show. So you're getting this wonderful situation of people who just wrote these books, possibly only back in the 70s, still, and there's 50, 60 years later, people are still doing new versions of them. And so that's again, Doctor Who never actually dying. And it means, therefore, you sort of feel a responsibility for your own future in a way, not to have let it down. You don't want people to have come to it and said, "Yeah, well, we're doing this one as well, but no one liked it." And, this one was just pumped out quickly and no one cared.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I did enjoy writing them. It was fun.
It's interesting because I mean, reading it, and I'd only listened to Chimes probably like 3 or 4 days before to do
Right.
the
The
podcast to
review.
review it.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit like, oh no, is that going to have sort of ruined it for me? Like
Yeah.
wishing that I'd just gone into it fresh and I'd forgotten a
You
little
can
bit
easily
about
spot
that
all.
bit. And yeah,
It's changed quite a bit, but
I was
Yeah.
going to say it feels so
It feels
so
fresher,
fresh.
doesn't
It
it?
feels it's still recognizably
Chimes.
that story. It's still the Chimes of Midnight, but
yeah,
it feels like Chimes 2.0. It really feels
yeah,
like
good.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
It's nice as
hopefully
well
not. You know,
because when I listen to Chimes, I had my imagination went and I could visualize. I am a very visual person, and I
right.
could kind of I lay that because I'm not very good with audio stuff because my mind wanders
No,
everywhere.
same. I've the same problem because I can't see things in my head.
Yeah,
I find that I get distracted really easily with radio and audio,
yeah,
and it becomes very difficult. And sometimes I listen to an audio and I have no idea what's going on, and it's not the audio's fault.
no,
But in my head, I just think, oh, this is convoluted. I don't know what's going on anymore. I have a
yeah,
big problem, and I've told Nick because Nick and I are very old friends, and because he runs Big Finish, and I say, I can't tell, mate. I mean, I will listen to a lot of what you're doing, and some of it I really like, some of it I don't know. I mean, it could be good, but I can't tell because it's just too visual for me.
yeah,
You'll say, well, that's not a bad thing. I'll say, but it is. I can't see it. So yeah,
yeah.
sorry, but I'm interrupting.
No, no, it's okay.
But you have a problem with audio as well.
Yeah, my attention span is because I'll hear something or I'll visualize something and then my mind goes off on that tangent and then I have to keep replaying. I was actually very lucky with the audio because that didn't happen at all because I was so engaged. But I still had like just a kind of basic visualization when I was listening to it. And then when I read the novel,
Yeah.
there was so much more detail and I had such clearer visualizations of what was happening as it was going on, and some of the new bits that you added as well are some of my favorite bits
Oh,
that
good.
yeah, that weren't in the audio, and I was like, that's so clever. I was like, that's brilliant, and especially the ending. I really enjoyed this version of the ending. I'm not going to give anything away
No,
just
I,
for
I
when
tried.
people, yeah, I'm trying not to.
Maybe I shan't either, but I was
No,
trying to give Edith a bit more sense that she's responsible for her own.
absolutely. It
Um,
the visuals and what I was as I was reading what I was thinking, I was just like, this is absolutely brilliant. I think it's
well,
such
thank
a
you so much. Thank you.
absolutely it's a really nice fresh take on what came beforehand, but it doesn't take away from what is already pre-existing either. So it balances very nicely. I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
It was really
Absolutely,
good. It was
yeah.
really good.
That I think was the big hope. I mean, again,
Yeah,
it's people. It's that awful thing. I mean, and we're fans, so we know exactly what it's like. It's like
absolutely.
if you go to a concert of one of of a an artist that you really like. You want to hear them do the songs that you love,
Yeah.
but you don't want to hear them as if it was just like the album.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of also don't want them to muck it about too much. So it's trying to find that it's a hard balance.
Yeah.
We're
Absolutely.
always wanting as fans that the things that we love are showing us something different, but we always it's like with Doctor Who. I mean, it's like watching Shooties stuff. I had so many friends that say, I don't know what this is anymore. And I think thinking, well, there's not it's remake now. I mean, I don't like all of it by any means, to be honest, but I liked a lot of it
Yeah.
because I kept thinking, well, I've not seen this before,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be watching another version of Day of the Daleks. I don't want to be watching something I have already seen done already, but now in a different context. I
Yeah.
want this to feel a bit like a challenge, and I like Doctor Who when it makes me think I'm not sure if I like this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's happened a lot over the years because I'm old. and also because my happy place, of course, is going to be Peter Davison.
Yeah.
Because that's how I was when I was 13. But at the same time, I don't really want to be watching Mordred Undead in 2025 as a 2025 story. I want to
Yeah.
be watching Lux. I want to sing 73 yards
Yeah.
because I don't know what to make of them at first.
Hmm.
And I think that, but it's difficult, because we're the reasons that if you ask people why they love Doctor Who, so many times it's about the fact that it can go anywhere and do anything,
Yeah.
and then we mind when it does.
Yeah.
and and fandom and nostalgia is innately, with a small c, conservative. We kind of want our fix, but we also kind of resent the fix.
Hmm.
It's difficult. I think novelizations in themselves are worrying. I mean, I don't know, when people originally were asking me some years ago whether there would ever be novelizations for the new series, and in my typical form, I just said there's not a chance because I always get it wrong. I said, why would we do novelizations now of what's already available on BBC iPlayer and Netflix? Everyone can see it.
Yeah.
There's no point doing that now. Let's just tell new stories.
Mm.
And then when they said they were doing them, I thought, why? What's the point? And then I read Day of the Doctor and Rose.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, that's the point.
Yeah.
They're really clever and
Yeah.
Mm.
different. And they're doing a different experience. I thought Stephen's Day of the Doctor was, I thought, okay, yeah. Because had I been in that first batch, I would probably have just done it as a Terrance Dicks and thinking, and it's, but I still will read people on the internet and they'll moan about that novelization because it's trying to be different. And you
Yeah.
think,
Mm.
but it's when you know that you haven't broken it, that you aren't. I can understand entirely. In again, it's not my fandom, but when I see Star Wars fans moan that special editions have now destroyed the originals and replaced it with new things, and you think, yeah, just leave it alone a
Yeah.
bit. I mean, maybe it's like watching the Doctor Who Blu-rays. I love it when they put new special effects on, but I would not want it to replace the original because that for me feels also a bit disrespectful.
Yeah.
This is someone else's thing from
Yeah.
years and years
Mm.
ago, and this was their art.
Yeah.
But when you know that you've got both, on the Blu-ray, you can watch it with or without, then that's wonderful. And that's
Yeah.
how it feels with novelizations. You think you can read this or listen to or watch the original. It's
Yeah.
fine. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just giving
so
it an alternative, isn't it? It's not a replacement, as
Yeah.
you say.
yeah, and it's also a far longer experience. I mean, that's also the part of the joy of reading is that, you know, I when you get, and I did print out for myself eventually the script of Chimes,
Mm.
and it's, I don't know, about 40,000. I don't actually know, it wouldn't be that. I mean, it's only about 6,000 words per episode.
Yeah.
So we're
Mm.
looking at, it's not many words, an actual script. And then you write the novel, it has to take more, it has to feel more expansive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to feel like a bigger deal. I
Hmm.
think it's very easy to watch or listen to Doctor Who and just say, "Oh, here's a nice, tight, minor story."
Yeah.
It's nice when you watch an episode of Doctor Who, particularly in the new series, and say, "Well, this actually feels like a really charming filler episode."
Yeah.
But every novel ought to feel like it's the most important thing ever, or else why are you bothering to buy it and read it?
Yeah.
So you have to, Chimes. I remember when I first wrote Chimes, it was part of a season of 6 stories, and it was fairly clear to me at the commission that I was intended to kick off the season. They moved it because I went too far with the arc, because that's what I did stupidly. So I made it story number 2. But
Right.
it was meant to be like a sort of a nice, light, throwaway bit of fun before the arc got deeper and more serious.
Right.
And that's sweet. And I kind of fought it because I sort of feel every Doctor Who story ought to feel at the moment that you're enjoying it, that for the Doctor at least, this is the most important story that they've ever been in.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's one of those sort of things I find a little bit, it's an old series reaction in part, but I always like to believe that, that as far as they're concerned, as they go through the adventure, that this is this could be their end of season
Hmm.
Yeah.
final. This
Yeah.
isn't the one where you say, well, this is an episode 4 light-hearted one. You ought to feel as you're doing it. It's like, when you've got sequences where the Doctor is going to make a sacrifice, he has to believe, I think,
Yeah.
this could be
This could
his
be it.
death. If he just thinks, oh, it's all right, I could just regenerate.
Yeah.
I find that the whole point of that heroism is tainted. So I sort of, Chimes had to feel to me like, and Jubilee, that they felt like, as I was writing them, that the Doctor thought these are my most important stories ever.
Yeah.
It's not always the case when you do a delicate thing on, you know. It's what I used to love, you see, is that, back in the day when I first sort of rejoined Doctor Who, because I was out of fandom for a while,
Mm.
in the 90s. It just didn't feel like I didn't really know anyone from Doctor Who any longer until I became part of Big Finish, which was
Yeah.
quite random. I was just asked because someone at university was involved in Big Finish and said, "Oh, there's this guy called Rob. He's a professional writer, and I know he loves Doctor Who." So they got
Mm.
me along, and suddenly I found I was just part of this wonderful world of new friends. And we'd go along to the pub every month at the tavern, the first Thursday of every month.
Yeah.
It's where I first met Moffat. It's where I first met, Nick Briggs, and I was his best man a bit later on. It
Oh,
became this
yeah.
thing where I suddenly made all these friends,
Mm.
and I still love that. The idea of getting together and just chatting Doctor Who with friends is is
Yeah.
is actually, I think, one of the best things that the program can give us.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
I I love how generous fandom is, and I love
Mm.
also how that's changed over the years. I love it if I go to conventions now. When I did conventions when I was a kid, no one ever cosplayed, for
Yeah.
example. No one was particularly creative. No one wrote fan fiction
Mm.
because we all sneered at it because it wasn't canon. It was
Yeah.
such a weird thing. Whereas now, I go to conventions, I'm astonished by the range of creativity you see on
Mm.
offer. It's just amazing. And everybody is warmer, I think, now
Yeah.
with the new series than they were back in my day. I think there was a lot of gatekeeping. Not that we called it back then particularly, but there was a sense of elitism a bit. Not in a deliberate way, it just was. People
Mm.
who'd seen the Hartnells had a bit more power
Mm.
because we all looked up to them, and it wasn't that they did it to us. Whereas now, what I love about the show is it's so huge and it's so wild that it's so huge that it would be ridiculous to, you meet Doctor Who fans who are so excited and they've only been watching it since Jodie,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example. And yet that is as valid a fandom as
Yeah.
anything else. The fact that I've been watching it since Davison doesn't mean that I know more
Yeah.
or I have better right to it. I love the fact that you see so much passion, people who love their specific Doctor and they don't really care beyond that, but that's
Mm.
still a valid Doctor Who.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's become therefore so much richer, and you get the passions for Big Finish. I see Big Finish fans who adore Big Finish, and I see people who love the comics so much, and
Mm-hmm.
it's incredibly touching to see that sort of range of passion, and yet we all come together, and
Mm.
yeah, it's still such a happy thing.
Yeah.
There's always a danger of fandom, all fandoms having a toxic element.
Yeah.
I do think Doctor Who fandom as a whole is a very, very happy, supportive, and rather gentle place. And I always, yeah, so
Mm. No, it's lovely.
happy,
It's really nice.
yeah. I think so. I go on to the BFI screenings whenever they do their Blu-ray things, and
Mm.
it's just so happy, and
Yeah.
everybody different walks of fandom are there, and everybody is so open with each other, and we're watching Terror of the Zygons on a big screen, but then we'll go off into the bar and chat about anything. It's a really, really happy environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. It is really, really nice. Well, speaking a little bit about your days at the tavern. Um,
Yeah.
how was it? Because obviously a lot of you had worked. Obviously Nick Briggs was sort of setting up Big Finish at this point. Yourself, Stephen Moffat,
Yeah.
getting into the Big Finish and novelizations, not novel, original novels rather, for Virgin and things. How
Yeah.
was it? What was that feeling like when the series comes back and a lot of
Oh, it was the weirdest thing. I mean, it, it was amazing. It also wrecked everything. I mean, one of the things that was lovely about Doctor Who at that point was that, I mean, we used to do these things called the Fan Olympiads, where a bunch of fans would get together, usually in a university town. There might be about 50, 60 of us, and we'd just play games for a weekend. We'd play variations of TV show games.
right?
We'd do treasure hunts, and it would just be Doctor Who fans all together taking the piss out of Doctor Who
Yeah.
because all of Doctor Who at that point was the same. I mean, we owned it, it was dead, and we could have everything was up for grabs in terms of friendly mocking, and yet we adored it, but we also knew all of it. It was like it was one single containable thing that we adored and also thought was hilarious
Yeah.
because there was no sense of being taking it too seriously because it was all, just this thing that we knew was over.
Mm.
When the show came back, there was a sudden, I don't know, I mean, I got it by going to the tavern. You suddenly felt a bit othered everyone was suddenly respectful. I'd be at the bar and people would come up and they'd be nervous and I'd say hello and they'd say, hello, you're Rob Shearman. I'd say, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'd say, let's laugh at the Invisible Enemy. And they'd be, but you wrote Dalek. And I'd say, yeah, I know, but that's okay. We can laugh at Dalek if you like.
Yeah.
It was a certain, I think it's inevitable that when it's actually on,
Mm.
you sort of take it in a more seriously. And also you get angrier about it. I
Yeah.
mean, because it's current. Whereas no, it's not worth being angry about. I don't know, for example, the hybrid storyline from series 9. No one cares anymore. It doesn't matter. If you liked it at the time, great. If you didn't like it, that's also great. Because what does it matter? It was years ago.
Yeah.
But at the time, you care. You don't think that's the storyline paid off. You get cross about it.
Yeah.
Or you don't like Jodie Whittaker's run. But now Jodie's left, and I think we can all warmly say, well, she seems really nice, and I like the stories or not. It doesn't matter because we've moved on. And
Yeah.
once the show ends, and I don't know if it has or not, but it'll come back in some form at some point, and it might be sooner or it might be later. But we're going to probably enter for a while another phase where we can just say, well, that's now bigger. It's become bigger. But actually, we can now just enjoy the fact that we're all equal in saying this is all old Doctor Who.
Yeah.
We can find all of it, something that we treasure and adore, even if we don't like all of it.
Yeah.
And we find all that quite sweet. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but I just feel that when things are ongoing, you can't really relax on them. And I'm not saying I want it to have stopped because I adore the show and I will miss it and I'll be annoyed if it's not on. But at the same time, there's a certain sense in which you just think, but it's kind of freeing to know that as fandom we can just say we now own this because they don't because they've stopped making it, but we
Right.
own it. It's
Yeah.
something that we can have a laugh at, and we can say, we can compare the reality war to the Mask of Mandragora if we want to, and we can say it's the same thing because it doesn't matter that the years separate them. As the years go by, it'll all be old Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that
Not,
benefit
I'm not
of
quite sure what my
hindsight.
point is, but there's a certain way in which that it was odd. I mean, seeing that the tavern suddenly became a different, yeah, the atmosphere of it being now, well, there is this old show, but also here are some people and they're now currently making it.
Hmm.
And no one, I think, wanted respect, but there was a certain, inevitably, there was a sense in which, you know, you're meeting people at the bar who are having to keep things secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a bit boring, isn't it? You want to say, well, there's no secrets left now because it's all done, it's all out there.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah,
How do you feel when I know you were saying earlier about that the only bits of Doctor Who you don't think are canon are the things that you've
yeah,
written.
my bits, yeah,
How
yeah,
how was it when Stephen Moffat is writing an episode or becoming showrunner, or Chris Chibnall, Paul Cornell, and these people that even like
yeah,
Nick Briggs with Big Finish and things like
yeah.
that. Was there any kind of strange detachment there and being like, oh, this is Doctor Who, but it's my mate from the pub that's written it? Like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of used to that now. It's odd. I mean, it feels weirder when I don't know the people involved.
Right.
So that I pretty much knew I knew most of the writers up until the end of Capaldi quite well. And if I didn't know them at the beginning, I knew them quite well afterwards. I mean, Peter Harness and I became, we first met the day after Kill the Moon went out, and then we began, we've been working together on a show for the last few years together because we became mates.
hmm,
And it became that sort of nice, easy thing. It changed when Chris took over because I didn't know the writers then. So I went into that series for the first time also, really, not knowing what's going to happen next.
hmm,
Yeah.
Because inevitably you sort of hear. I mean, it's just because people want to share. If you go out for, a drink with Stephen, Stephen wants to, he doesn't give you spoilers, but you're his friends, so you'll.
You'll
I
hear
mean, Stephen
things. Yeah.
would always be lovely because you'd go out for a drink with Stephen and he'd be at the end of a season and he'd be very open about because that's Stephen. He'd just say, "Oh, I don't think it worked." If they really just say, "Yeah, I don't think that was very good," and then you could discuss it with him, and he would say,
hmm,
"Ah, what did I get wrong?" I mean that's because Stephen was always trying to correct
Yeah.
everything he was doing because that's his way through life.
hmm,
So it meant that you always felt a bit engaged with it. When, as I say, I mean, I've become friends with Jodie Writer since. I mean, Joy Wilkinson is a great mate now, and I think and she's a sweetheart. And I didn't know her at the time,
hmm.
so I suddenly felt, yeah, I mean, there was a distancing there, but it's also the way it ought to be. I mean, Doctor Who oughtn't to be just a place I go and turn on the TV so I can see what my mates are up to. I mean, the hardest thing actually was when they cast David
Hmm.
because I knew David a
Yeah.
bit. I mean, it's a funny story which I've probably told a few times before, but I first met David when I I was I used to write a lot at the National Theatre because I like the seats in the cafe, and and I was just writing something, and it probably wasn't Doctor Who, but this chap came up to me. I said, "Hello, sorry to bother you. Are you Rob Shearman?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Oh, I'm a big Doctor Who fan." And I said, "Oh, that's great. So he sat and I took a break and we had a chat. And he said, "Oh, I really enjoyed, your big finishes." I said, "Oh, thanks very much." He said, "I'm an actor." I said, "Are you? Oh, all right." And he said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "I don't even Doctor Who." I said, "Oh, well, who wouldn't?"
Yeah.
He said, "Well, you could maybe have been a big finish." He said, "Oh, I've done one or two." I said, "Oh, great." And he said, "Anyway, I'm doing a show here at the National." I said, "Oh, well done, you." I said, and he said, "Yeah." And I assumed, of course, because he was so sweet and so immediately humble and a big Doctor Who fan,
Yeah.
that he was probably going to be a spear carrier. And I went to see and he got me a couple of tickets, and I went to see the Pillow Man. And of course, he comes on stage at the beginning. I said, "Oh, it's all at the beginning." And of course, it's, and David Tennant is astonishing in The Pillow Man. And I'm watching and going, what? Because David presented himself simply as being this kind of very amiable but totally low status Doctor Who fan. I went
Yeah.
backstage to see him and I introduced the rest of the cast and I'd say to him, he said, "Oh yeah, I just love Doctor Who." And it was funny. So when David got cast, and I didn't know David very well, but we met a few times socially. It was suddenly seeing someone that you knew that this meant the world to
Yeah.
Hmm.
have to take on the status also of being the Doctor, but also a really suddenly significantly famous actor. And he's such
Yeah.
a great actor. And I've not
Yeah.
seen David
Hmm.
in years. But from that point on, in some ways, I remember when I first met Matt. and that was at the read through for the 11th hour.
Mm.
And I was there, and up comes Matt. And I remember, when he was cast, and I saw on the Doctor Who Confidential thing, and I thought, oh, he's young. I thought, oh well, this will be my first Doctor that I think, well, he's a bit too young for to take seriously, because I'm old. And up comes Matt to me. He says, "Hello, have you seen Tomb of the Cybermen? It's great." And I said, "Yeah." I have. And he said, "Yeah, I'm Matt." And I said, "Yeah." And he's this ball of energy. And he's taller than I recognised. And all I could suddenly think was, "Oh God, he's Doctor Who. He's Doctor Who."
Yeah.
And I was prepared to go in there and just think, well, I can treat him a little bit like a young actor, but no, he's now Doctor Who, and I've got to be.
Yeah.
So every time I meet anyone from Doctor Who, I'm a bit in awe of them,
Yeah.
even though I met them the day before and just thought, oh, that's a nice young actor.
Hmm.
So it's the odd thing. Yeah, it's always a bit strange, a little bit that I've always felt a little bit that I got so close to Doctor Who that I can't quite relax with it in the same way, but and yet I still do. I mean, as I say, the only thing I don't regard as take totally seriously in Doctor Who is my own stuff. With everybody else doing what they're doing, I'm a bit in awe, actually. I remember, Stephen was saying to me years ago, "Oh, I'm writing this episode. It's just going to be Peter. He's just going to be bashing against a wall." And I said, "Sounds
Okay.
good."
Yeah.
And then I said, has the money run out? And he said, it might not be a cheap one. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, good, yeah. And then you see it later, you say, oh, okay,
Oh,
yeah, that's astonishing. And there's a
yeah.
disjunct, and then you go and send a text, and you say, that was good. And you're aware, even as you're doing it, you're thinking, I'm texting a Doctor Who writer. And,
Yeah.
and I think, oh, I'm a Doctor Who writer.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's me too.
it's that odd thing that sometimes even now, there's that child thing in me that I if I'm watching an old episode, a part of me will suddenly say, "Wouldn't it be amazing if one day you wrote a Doctor Who episode?" And I think I did. I did do it. And I just go, "Oh well, yeah, yeah." And my brain says, "Yeah, but not a proper one because it's not got the Starfield of Davison in it."
Right.
But there's a part of me which actually genuinely does forget,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
I'm just the fan, and that's with both past and present Doctor Who. I'll be watching it, and I won't remember in the moment that I'm actually a part of it
Mm.
Mm.
because that was years ago, and it was one episode. It was fine. I can park that and just pretend I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's in terms of like writing for? So presumably you've met a lot of you know writers, but also cast and I know your wife is good friends with Kate Manning. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a weird thing. I mean, we were on holiday recently, and Katie tends to house sit for us.
Mm.
And there's a very, very small part of my brain now will remember that, being that 13-year-old who would have been floored by the fact that, Katie looks after my cat.
Yeah.
The other part just thinks, oh, I hope Katie doesn't break anything in there.
Yeah.
Um, no, I mean, Katie is an odd thing about it. I mean, when I got together with Janie, which was back in the late 90s, um, I didn't know that she knew Katie for ages because Katie lived in Australia. Then, it kind of just you become aware. You think, oh, okay, and you meet up, and you think originally when you meet, you think, do I admit that I actually got upstairs in the cupboard all these um, Virgin Missing Adventures, which you won't even be aware of, that you're on the cover of, but there are entire novels being written about you even now.
Yeah.
And but over time, of course, you just become, but you are part of that same family, so it's
Mm.
odd. Um, yeah, it's a bit strange. I mean, I still feel a shyness if I go to a convention. I'm in the green room, and actors from the past that, or indeed the present, that are very nice to me. And they probably wonder why I'm being so nervous originally, because in my head, I still feel a bit like a fan. I was on
Mm.
holiday a few weeks ago with Michael Troughton.
Mm.
We were just on holiday together. I mean, we were part of a group.
Right.
It wasn't a Doctor Who thing, but we
Yeah.
nevertheless. And he's lovely, and I sort of didn't want him to. I mean, and he knew I was a Doctor Who writer, but we didn't discuss Doctor Who at all. I didn't actually ever want to bring up his dad. I just thought I don't want to bring up the fact that your dad's my favourite Doctor. I just don't want to discuss that with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it came out of it was a 10-day holiday, so eventually it came out. But it
Yeah.
was that funny thing. You just think, but a part of you also inside is saying, "That's Michael Troughton."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went on set for the Web of Fear. I mean, these things that you're aware of, it's a strange thing. I mean, Doctor
Mm.
Who is it's very odd to have contributed to something that you're still a fan of.
Mm.
It's like a mental switch that goes backwards and forwards a bit. Which when I was writing Dalek, I found that quite hard
Mm.
because part of me wanted to be reacting to the fact I was doing Dalek at all times, like I don't know, won a competition, like I'd won a Blue Peter competition.
Yeah.
But actually, I was trying to do my job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was thinking, I can't believe I'm writing for the Daleks.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, so if I'm doing that, why isn't this more fun? Why is it like just like doing a job?
Yeah.
So it's an odd thing. Yeah, but we're very, very happy.
What was it like in terms of? So you've written for Colin, Paul, and Chris. Is that
Yes,
I've not missed anyone,
yes,
have I?
that's right.
Is it just that?
I
Is it
wrote a
just
BBV audio for Sylve
yes?
as well. But we don't really count that.
A legally
I've never
distinct
heard it. I mean, I
seventh
think it's
Doctor.
all right, but and Silver's great. I mean, I know Silver anyway. But yeah, I mean, Colin was my doctor at Big Finish that I
Mm.
enjoyed working with the most. I mean, Paul was great too. It's just that I always felt with Paul that I was part of big series arcs,
Yeah,
so Times and Skirts. So I mean, I really enjoyed doing them, but it was part of that. You go on to recording. It wasn't your story; it was the season being done.
Yeah.
Whereas
yeah,
if I did Jubilee or Holy Terror, or even my Mozart thing.
yeah,
I always felt that Colin was there for me. It was
yeah.
a nice, and Colin's very easy anyway to get on with. So yeah, so yes, I mean Colin was a joy.
What differences did you find, or are there differences in writing for those certain Doctors? And is it because I guess you've got with Colin, you've got a Doctor that you saw on TV and that you sort of know pretty
Yeah,
well. Paul, I guess you've only really got the
yeah, it was
the
only
one
ever the
film
TV
and
movie.
then some of like the Big Finish that you had heard
But even
before.
that, I mean, that's what when I wrote Chimes. I mean, Still Morning hadn't been released at that point.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, and when I wrote Scherzo, Zagreus hadn't been written yet. Even, so there was a sense that all of those things we were going in quite blind,
Mm.
Hmm.
because of just a matter of time. So all we had, I mean, those first 10 McGann audio scripts are all kind of written in that same, all we've got is the TV movie,
Hmm.
which I hadn't much liked at the time.
Hmm.
I thought he was fine, but again, in that sort of strange, oh, well, we don't know what to do with him yet, so it's all kind of bland and eccentric, and no
Mm.
doubt to that a part would have developed, but we never got to see it.
Yeah.
And I felt the same thing writing for Chris in Dalek, because, of course, he hadn't been cast when I was writing the first few drafts of Dalek.
Hmm.
So again, I mean, Chimes and Dalek felt similar because I was just writing for an idealized version of what I hoped they'd be.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But actually, that was easier in a way. I mean, writing for Colin was trickier because you're trying to react against Colin's that that unfair sense that Colin's tenure hadn't been particularly successful.
Hmm.
So you're trying to reinvent the part a bit
Yeah.
in a way that Colin also wants. Whereas with Paul and Chris, it was very much, I just want to write Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chimes, it was such fun doing that because I remember just thinking, well, all I've got is what he looks like, and I'm writing him this way, and it seemed to fit, and it was
Yeah.
fine. Um, I wanted him to be, kind and emotional, really. Whereas with Dalek, of course, it's not that at all. I mean, it was,
Opposite.
it was, yeah, it was kind of brutal. I
Yeah.
mean, Colin doesn't like it much. I mean, that's one of the things in Jubilee that was quite fun in the novel, is that, and I told him I was doing this, and he seemed quite pleased. Over the years, whenever I see Colin at a convention, he'll always say it to me at some point. He'll say, I don't like your episode. I don't like Dalek. And I'll say, no, I know. And he said, based on Jubilee, I know it is, Colin. Yeah, I know. Yeah. He said, he's just really nasty, what the Doctor does. I said, I know. You didn't really like that, did you? I said, yes. Yeah, but it wasn't your choice. I said, yes, of course, yeah, it's what came out. It's what the story is. It's about trying to tap into him going too far. I said, I don't like that. So in Jubilee, there's a bit where the Doctor gets a glimpse of his future self, the Eccleston Doctor meeting a Dalek. And he just says, I will never do that, is what the Doctor says. I will never go there. And you think, okay, because that's what Colin himself would have said.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I mean, it's kind of freeing to write for a fresh Doctor.
Mm.
And I was doing the same for a little while with Matt, when I was trying to write, but not very successfully, a script there. I didn't get very far with that, as I say. It never really got further than a few synopses, but it was, again, you go in thinking, oh, I'm basing this upon the scripts I'm receiving of the 11th hour. And I was based like upon what I'd read of Aliens of London and Rose. But again, not doing those because that wasn't what I was trying to subvert it anyway a bit.
Mm.
So I don't know. I think you want the Doctor as the Doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that cleverer writers than me can be quite good at not doing that. But I think I tend to write a fairly generic Doctor, actually, and then let the people doing it fill it out in the way that they want to,
Right.
which is probably a bit of a Terence Dicks approach, which is, I'm not sure the right approach, but it seems to have worked okay.
But I
I,
think,
I think that there are cleverer writers in the extended universe who really know how to write really well for those specific Doctors, but I think I just kind of like the same Doctor.
but I think at its core, the character is it's one character, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I think the different sort of it's idiosyncrasies and slight
yeah. And
phrasings
actually,
or
I must admit, whenever I hear some big finishes, as an example, or read some Doctor Who books, I'm not attacking anything in particular, but whenever I read somebody's take upon an old Doctor and they put in a sort of quirk, like, if anyone writes a Tom Baker story and then they have him produce Jelly Babies, I think, oh, just don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
Anyone does a Matt Smith and has him talking about um, fish custard, I just think, but he doesn't do that all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
So there's a way in which you can almost overdo it. I mean,
absolutely,
in some ways, again, there's that way in which I think as a writer that you sort of want to reassure yourself as you're doing it that you've got the thing right. But it was like I got a note from with Jubilee where I think that, I can't remember who it was, and it doesn't really matter, but I think there was a note suggesting I might lean more into some Colin Bakerisms in Jubilee, and I thought, no, I'm not having him suddenly repeat things 3 times. I just think no, or indeed, I just want to write him as a part, and
Yeah.
I
yeah,
like to. Colin would fill that part, but I don't want it to feel like I'm trying to recapture the moment from Vengeance on Varos where he did that.
Yeah.
And I think it's always the danger with writing Doctor Who is when you can almost get intimidated by the weight of it and feel that you're almost cosplaying it in your own writing.
Yeah.
I remember hearing, again, this isn't a dig at anyone in particular, but I remember hearing a very early BBV audio. And the writer had obviously, as I do, loved Kinder.
Right.
And they used specific lines from it. I think you will agree to being me sooner or later. And I thought, oh, don't use the line. Because
Yeah.
ideas, but also the actor who's doing it has no idea and they don't do it the same way.
Yeah.
It's like if you're going to write a Davison and you give him a cliffhanger where you says, I'm not going to let you stop me now, and he won't do it the way he did it for Androzani. He'll do it a different way now, and you'll think,
Yeah.
oh,
Doesn't hit the same.
that's right.
Yeah.
You can't really recreate. I
No.
mean, all you can do is something a bit different. And the moment that you start standing outside as a Doctor Who fan writer
Mm.
and start saying, I want to recreate the thing which made me happy when I was 14, you're almost certainly not going to convince anybody
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's not, because it won't be what they do.
Mm.
I mean, the best example of it in a funny way is with Chris. I wrote that scene with him meeting the Dalek, which is a big important scene.
Hmm.
And what Chris did with it wasn't what I expected. I
Okay.
mean, it's amazing, but I wrote it to be quite arch because that's what the Doctor is.
Yeah.
The Doctor, you can imagine any other Doctor going into that scene going, so yes, your great space dustbin. How does it feel? You can, and Chris just goes manic for it.
Mm.
Hmm.
And I remember watching that at the time, in an early thing, and just thinking, what's he doing? I thought, and I thought, this is astonishing, but it's certainly throwing away all of those things that you, as a writer, if you
Hmm.
think that as you're writing the script, you're trying to create something, to recreate something that you loved in the past, someone else is going to just screw all those things up and throw them aside, and they'll
Yeah.
do it their own way anyway.
Hmm.
And it's better that they do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, every single time I wrote Doctor Who, I was always very conscious that I mustn't simply try to buy into the stories that I loved the most and try and do them. And also because the stories I love in Doctor Who, I couldn't write them. I mean, I could only write my stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd always try and marry Doctor Who to my own silly ideas, but
Hmm.
don't necessarily. I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, the thing which I always found so funny. I remember being interviewed about the Holy Terror at the time it came out, and being painfully aware when I was being interviewed about it that the fan in me, the 13-year-old fan who was not that long ago at that point, would have hated it. He'd have hated that bloody penguin. He wanted everything to be Androzani. He'd have hated the fact this was a silly, jokey thing. But that's what as a writer, I write that. So
Yeah.
annoying Doctor Who fan, I don't necessarily like my own stuff.
Right.
I much rather, it's odd. I mean,
It's
that isn't entirely true, but I mean, my favourite poetry is Carnival of Monsters.
Yeah.
And
mm.
that's exactly the way I'd like to write Doctor Who if I could.
Hmm.
It's really funny and clever and quirky.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Have you got a favourite from the of all the stories that you've written?
Uh, yeah, I suppose. I mean, it feels like being a contrarian, but because I mean, I think Chimes probably is the best actually, but the one because it just seems to have the long life that
Mm.
I would have not expected for it, and I think it is good, and I really enjoyed novelizing it and realizing why people liked it.
Yeah.
But I think the audio I'm happiest with is Deadline, the
Hmm.
Derek Jacobi Unbound. It
Yeah.
wasn't very popular at the time, particularly. I mean, I think people just thought I was taking the piss or being a bit, but actually, it's quite personal, and it's very
Mm.
much the sort of writer that I felt I was becoming. And it's very, very meta. It does make lots of reference to my own stuff. And I just found that to be the most fun I had ever writing a Doctor Who, and also I was really proud of the way it turned out. I think Derek is amazing in it, and it's the one I could listen to as it came out, just thinking
Mm.
note by note, because it's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
Whereas in all the others, there are bits you just think, well, that's not quite what I wanted. But that was so. Deadline's probably my favourite,
Mm.
but I don't necessarily think that that's one that I'd recommend anyone else necessarily listen to. I think Chimes is probably pretty good. I mean, the Scherzo I've never
Hmm.
quite dared listen back to, but over the years it seems to have acquired a certain respect from people that I never thought it would. when I wrote it and it came out, I remember a lot of people at Big Finish too saying, "This is awful. What have you done
Oh
that for?"
no.
And I'd think, "Oh yeah, well, tried. It was different." I remember Nick Briggs saying to me, and Nick won't mind me saying this, he won't hear this anyway, but Nick still says to me, "It's really awful, Skirt Sound." And I say, "Yeah, thanks,
Thank
mate."
you.
Um, yeah,
I
but it's
I think it's beautiful. I
but
think
yeah, but
it's
people really like it, and only in the last few years when I found myself, I ventured onto Tumblr out of curiosity, and it's full of people doing scherzo art, and I thought,
Mm.
what? Why? I mean, I'm not saying that's all Tumblr is.
No.
Obviously, that would be insane. But I did think, oh, I honestly thought no one cared about this one, but that one seems to be the one that I think Holy Terror probably gets the least attention now. And I think it's a bit overwritten from memory, and it does go to a rather dark place. If I ever novelised that one, I'd want to do a different take on it, I think. But
Mm.
I don't really remember it very well. But that one seems to be the one that for a long time that one seemed to be quite well regarded, but now it's not one I ever hear people ever talk to me about. So I suspect that one's fallen by the wayside a bit.
Do you think that's
Oh,
just
well,
because it was your first, or that
I
Chimes
don't
and
know.
Jubilee have kind of
I think it's
risen through the rankings,
I mean,
maybe?
Chimes kind of dominated. It was very odd. I didn't expect it at the time, and I certainly am delighted all these years later that it's still liked, and
Mm.
listened to. I think it being Christmas helps. I think that it gives people a reason to listen to it at Christmas. And I think Hoagie Terror, it never sold very well, Hoagie Terror, anyway, because we had that bloody penguin in it. But I think Hoagie Terror was, I mean, I did Hoagie Terror thinking it'd be my one and only one.
Right.
And I thought at the time, yeah, this is all right. This has
It's
come
great.
off.
It's really
It's a
good.
Yeah.
bit,
Really, really good.
it's a bit too long, but it's all right. And Sam Kelly was really good in it, I remember, as Eugene
Hmm.
Tacitus, and as the scribe and as the really creepy kid. And yeah, I, I think I'm happy with all of them really in their own
Mm.
way. I mean, even things like Maltese Penguin and the I've never heard the Mozart one, but I think that was quite fun.
Oh, it's great.
I just haven't
It's
got
so
around.
oh,
I
it's
always
so
have.
fun.
But I remember that being very much my saying, "This is my final one,"
Mm.
which is why it's quite rude, really, the Mozart one. I mean, in as much as it's all meant to be, it's the 100th release, wasn't it? And
Yes, yeah.
I remember writing the entire story, which is basically saying, "Know when to stop."
Yeah.
It was so obvious. It's not even subtle. It's just saying to Big Finish, "You used to be good." TV shows on. Why are you still doing it? Bye. And I just gave them the script,
Uh,
and I think that they just chuckled and did it anyway.
yeah.
And that was kind of them actually, because that was quite an arrogant.
But
But yeah,
it's so tongue in cheek. It's so
it was quite
because
sweet. Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's I think it's done with at least it feels like it's done with a nod and a wink. Like
oh yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think what Big Finish have done and what they're still doing. I mean, I've heard some Big Finish recently, which utterly knocked my socks off. I think what Alfie Shaw's done with the 11th Doctor stuff
Mm,
is remarkable,
yeah.
really, really brilliant. I mean, I heard again. I've been going on lots of. I mean, I'm into long 20-mile hikes a lot at the moment, and I listen to Big Finish then, and I just was gobbling up the box sets of the 11th Doctor and just thinking this is such good drama,
Mm,
and it's so well done by Jacob Dubman, and it's really really clever and much cleverer than what I was doing, and I'm amazed by the level of consistency I hear across. I mean, I've only heard a fraction, but I dart around listening to Big Finishes a bit at the moment, and I'm just thinking that, and it seems actually that they're never quite given the proper credit for just how much quality they actually do. It could
Yeah.
so easily be, and I think for a long time I was guilty of assuming it must be. I didn't hear any for a while. I just for many years and just thought, oh, they must be just churning it out.
Mm.
And they don't. It's what I said to you a couple of hours ago. No one goes into this thinking that they're not trying to write the best Doctor Who story that they've ever done
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
has ever been made. Everybody really cares, and that
Mm-hmm.
comes across. And not everything works, but everything's intended to be amazing,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff is. So yeah,
Obviously, we've spoken quite a lot about your Doctor Who work, um, but your career as a writer isn't just Doctor Who. Obviously, that
yeah,
that body of theatre work, sort of quite a solid, you know,
which
production
I think is
company
okay. Yeah,
in the nineties.
I had a play start rehearsals yesterday
Mm-hmm.
in Sweden, which is quite nice. And I've writing a brand new play at the moment, or starting one, which is hopefully going to come off, but it's been commissioned. So, I mean, that should be quite a, but I can't say much about that yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing theatre again, which I hadn't for a number of years. And theatre
That's great.
is my big passion.
Mm.
As Kat knows, we've discussed, immersive theatre and stuff, which
Yeah.
I adore. Um, but I tend to I write lots of weird short story books these days, which are quite fun. And I mean, I really enjoy the short story
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
format. And yeah. So I'm going to do another one of those quite soon.
Because your last one. We all hear stories in the dark.
Yeah, which of course is that thick. I mean,
Yeah.
it's longer than War and Peace. It's an attempt to try and do. I wanted to try and do a really. I was trying to reconstruct the sense of going into an immersive theatre thing where you just wander around and find things. And I
Yeah.
wanted to write a book in which nobody could read the same book twice.
Yeah.
Mm.
That the idea of it is that this a man has lost his wife, and he's he tries to find her effectively by reading all the books in the world, which you can do if you read them in the right order. I mean, that is the key. Everybody has a special right order. You can read everything ever written in 2.5 weeks, and he finds the right key. He reads everything, and it's fine. But he doesn't find his wife within it. It just leaves him sadder and lonelier in a way. And then the library write to him and say there are still some stories you haven't yet had. There are 101 stories left in the world. And an old woman in the dark, in the back of the library, is going to read them to you. At the end of each story, there'll be 5 questions, which determine which story you pick next. And if you read all the stories in the right order, you'll get your wife back.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about this sort of 101 different stories which collide with each other, and they have different impacts depending on which order you read them in, because then some are funny and some are scary and some half start one way, start the other. Some are very emotional, some are silly, some are children's stories, some are romances, I mean, and you don't know going in.
Mm.
And things, a lot of the stories change direction as you go through them. So that it's something which has occurred to me when I write things like, if I write for an anthology, say someone says to me, write an anthology about zombies, write a story for that. You think, well, there's the big twist revealed. It's already every story in the book is about zombies already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go into, I find it much scarier anyway to go into a story not knowing what genre it is.
Mm.
Every time you go and see a movie in the theatre, you know it's a rom-com if you're going there, so you know that you have a rom-com sense of mind.
Yeah.
But if you went into a movie and they never told you
Mm.
this is actually a romantic comedy, if you went to see When Harry Met Sally, and you thought all the way through that maybe this is a horror movie, maybe at any moment now someone's going to come out and knife Meg Ryan to death, you'd be a bit more tense during it. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to try a book in which people would follow a path, and the number of paths are so huge that it's more than the grains of sand on the planet. So the odds of anybody reading the same book you do
Yeah.
are, so remote. I mean, people will, but because that's how probability works, is that just because the odds are huge doesn't mean it won't be happening.
Mm.
But the idea of the book is that the book becomes the book you choose.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like a certain story, you'll be told that you can go down different paths. And it warns you about going down a dark path where the stories get darker and darker, and the book stories get more and more start challenging you about why you're even reading them. And so it becomes a yeah, that's a weird book. But I had such fun writing that. I
Yeah.
mean, that took years to write, but God, I loved it. And that was yeah, that was 2020 that came out. So yeah. So I'm doing another short story collection quite soon, but it's not as complicated. It's a
Right.
bunch of short stories really.
Yeah.
Um,
I was going to say because
but yeah,
that's such a mammoth project.
Mm.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, it's much fun to do. I mean, it was something I had to just do around other
Other
things,
things,
but
yeah.
it
yeah.
was, I was teaching a bit at the time. I was doing a creative writing thing. I was resident writer at Edinburgh
Mm.
for a year, and so I was in my office and I was be writing new short stories while I was seeing students occasionally. It was fun. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm glad to hear that you've got another one sort of in the pipeline.
Yeah, it seems about time now.
I did sort of worry. I was like, oh, that was about 5 years ago. I wonder if he's just like after we all his stories in the dark. He's
That's
like, oh,
it.
I did feel after that I need to do something different for a while. So I
mm,
went and worked on a show for Apple called Constellation, which Peter Harness was doing.
mm,
So I was script consultant on that. So I'd be constantly in Sweden, sitting around his table, trying to devise what would happen next in the story. It was fun. I mean, I didn't write any of it, but
mm,
I was involved in the shaping of it, and that was a nice on and off job for a few years. And then you see what happens with the show being made, which is huge budget show, and you think, oh, and then Apple cancelled it anyway after the first season. You think, no. So we had a few seasons of that in mind, but we were some way to developing season two. But that's the nature of big TV. It's why
mm,
I like writing short stories because no one has to care. It's that wonderful thing that they're quite cheap. I
mm,
mean, it's like why theatre's easier than writing television. I love theatre because theatre's not cheap, but you don't feel that the but with TV, no one's ever going to leave you alone because there's too much money.
yeah,
So no one's ever going to take your first script.
Yeah.
They'll
mm,
just say, "Well, that's great, but let's now put it through 15 people reacting to it with their different contradictory notes because there's no way that no one can have the courage just to make this as it is,
Yeah.
because that's crazy. It costs a lot of money. Whereas in theatre, part of the joy of working with Eightborn would be, he'd take my scripts. They'd usually be quite late delivered because that's how Alan quite liked it. It's what he always used to do. And you put it on, and then you'd stand in the wings with him on opening night, and he'd say, "That was a good one," or he'd say, "Oh, it didn't work, did it? Oh well, come back next year, do another one," and you go away and do that, and you have the right to fail.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about short stories too, is that if I write a bad short story, and I've written a lot of bad short stories, no one dies. It's great. I mean, I can write terrible crap, and no one really suffers. I mean, it may not even get published, but if it does get published, people go, yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to have crashed an aeroplane. It's not like I'm a really bad airline pilot. And
Yeah.
it's what I try and tell people who do creative writing is that you only get good by actually making most of the stuff you do not work.
Mm.
Um, like I think the only really good way of writing anyway is to take risks. And if every single thing you write succeeds, you're only telling yourself you're taking risks.
Yeah.
Because how can it all be a risk? If every single time you take a risk, oh, it pans out beautifully, you're just making yourself think that. But actually, you've got to just mathematically cock it up a few times because otherwise, how can you know?
yeah,
And that's one of the things about, going back to Doctor Who, is that I've always felt more comfortable getting things really badly wrong in a media in a form where I won't be haunted by them.
yeah,
Whereas if I came back to do Doctor Who, that's not the place I want to take the risks. And yet Doctor Who requires the risks.
Yeah.
The only way to make Doctor Who work is to be as extraordinarily bold as you can be, which is what Russell can be, and
Yeah.
Stephen and Chris. And they will, Flux is an extraordinary gamble.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I think it entirely works, but I'm so glad that someone did it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But I'd never have dared. I would have wanted to say, oh, we better not do that. Whereas I think when I did my big finishes, I genuinely didn't think anyone was going to care very long. So I could say things like, oh, let's just do scherzo. And then you do it and it comes off or it doesn't. But now I would be, I think, probably too nervous. So I try and be bold and, with my other stuff. But I think Doctor Who makes me feel, I sort of want to get Doctor Who right
Yeah.
Mm.
every single time, and yet Doctor Who deserves people making mistakes on it. That's what makes Doctor Who great,
Yeah.
and it's why I get impatient myself with people who get angry at episodes that don't work. You think that's the whole remit of Doctor Who, is that not all of this works.
Hmm.
If you don't like the Interstellar Song Contest or the Song and the Engine in the last, which are two widely different episodes back to back, but they're both doing really different things.
Hmm.
And I really like one of them, and I really don't like the other one. And I'm not going to say which is which. Um, but I'm glad that they both exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think that that's the whole point of the show, is to be doing that.
Yeah.
And if they're just doing Earthshock again,
Hmm.
well, we had that, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
the risk of it, that was a risk at its own time, actually. I mean, everyone thinks Earthshock. You look back at it and you realize it's not actually like anything that's ever been on Doctor Who before. It just thinks it is. You're
Yeah.
watching it thinking this feels like a big nostalgic thing, but no one's ever actually done it.
Hmm.
It's remarkable. But doing it again now is silly.
Yeah.
Um, and yet, we also kind of want that. So
I think
anyway, so
it's I think it's one of those things where it's like, if I can watch an episode or read a book or listen to, even outside of Doctor Who, um, if such things exist. Um,
yeah,
but I think I can watch it and go, I really didn't like that. I hated that. But if I can
yeah,
see that there's ambition and they've taken that big swing and they've tried, then
yeah,
I respect it. You could,
yeah.
because
And
I've got so
yeah,
much more.
it comes down also to, one not liking something actually is fine.
Mm.
Yeah.
There are so many things I just don't like. I mean, I went to the theatre a few nights ago, and to the National, and I saw a show I didn't particularly like, but I don't doubt for a moment that my not liking it actually in no way invalidates it, and might actually be that I need to think about why I didn't. I mean, I,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think that that's, and I'm not saying that every single thing gets away with that. And of course, there are lots of things that just don't work. Lots of things you can watch on TV or movies or whatever, or books, which are just bad. And you have the right to say that as well. It's fine. But I
Mm.
do think that but you're not actually hurt by things you don't like. It's okay not, if you watch a movie that you just think is rubbish, you're not actually really, you shouldn't be really offended by it. It's why, again, fandom can be so angry about things. You'll bring out, I've never seen not Marvels, a Marvel. I don't like superheroes much,
Mm.
Mm.
but I still recognize, because I see people get very whipped up in disappointment or triumph when there's a new superhero movie. And I just think, okay, you didn't like that one, but and you're very angry on Twitter about it, but I still think it didn't really hurt you.
No.
It's fine that you thought it was crap.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Actually, it is also quite good to have that feeling.
Hmm.
I quite enjoy watching Doctor Who and saying, "Oh, this one's crap," and I kind of enjoy the sensation of thinking, "Well, I think my one was better."
Yeah.
There we are. I mean,
Yeah.
I can sit there and think, "Oh, well, this hasn't, this won't win a second poll." It's fun, and it's okay not to be, everything being the same. Everything. If you, I was thinking about it as a story recently. If you were suddenly told that you could only read 100 more books in your lifetime, um, which is a very me sort of story style, which I probably won't actually do. Just picking the 100 best stories will become quite boring.
Yeah.
You'd probably actually want to read a few books in the rest of your lifetime, if you had 100 left. But you just thought, no, hated that because that also is kind of fun and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
also kind of good to get angry.
Hmm.
I tried a project which I've given up on now because I don't think anyone wanted it, but I wanted to write a book where I read all 750 Booker nominees and wrote about my experience of doing so. And I got about 200 in, and I loved a lot of them, and I found most good, but didn't, but that's fine. And I got really angry about a few of them. And I just realized after a while that I really enjoyed finding when I was angry about it.
Yeah.
Really, okay, I'm now doing the 1977 shortlist, and I'm going to read this one. Oh, I hate this. This is brilliant. You'd
Yeah.
really be really famous about it. And I gave up on that book because it was pointed out to me many times that no one would ever want to read this book. But it was but it was fun to do, and it was
Yeah.
also fun to sort of say. But actually, but the reason I gave up in part was the realization that to do the book, I'd have to spend the next few years. Every novel I read had to really be a Booker nominee, and I want
Mm.
to be able to read other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say, I also want to sit down and maybe read a friend who's written a new Doctor Who novel.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, why do I have to then feel guilty that I'm not reading, Beryl Bainbridge? So yeah, I think that it's a very very open church, all of
Absolutely.
us,
But I think as
and
it
I
should
think
be.
that's yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Mm.
I mean, and it's like my great love being punch drunk, as I've discussed with Kat before.
Yeah.
But part of the fun about going to punch drunk is going with people who don't necessarily get on board with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My, I mean, my wife has seen The Burnt City. She saw it twice, and she really enjoyed it. But the first time, a lot of it was about the argument she was having in her head about whether or not she liked it or not.
Right.
And I remember when I first saw my first Punch Drunk, I spent most of the show thinking, "Is this shit? Or is it
Yeah.
extraordinary?" And I can't
Yeah.
tell. But eventually, I thought, I think it's extraordinary,
Mm.
but I wasn't sure, and that was kind of fun as an argument inside. Not
Yeah.
everything has to be immediately amazing.
Yeah.
Mm.
There are so many books that I've read or reread over the years, which I really dismissed to begin with, but I now realise I was just in the wrong place to read them.
Yeah.
And and that's actually one of the things that we always do isn't Stories in the Dark. It came out of part in part because I read Jane Eyre in my late 30s and didn't like it, whilst recognising if I'd read it in my late teens, I'd have adored it.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I was reading it in the wrong order.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel that most things that we experience artistically or in life generally, but work or not for us because what we've just read or seen beforehand is in some ways an influence on it. And just some things we just do in the wrong order.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there's a time to read this book and not that time. And it's not the book's fault, but nor is it your fault for not
No.
liking it. It's why you can't take any, people are going to go online starting probably tomorrow and tell me what they think about Chimes and Jubilee.
Yeah.
And it's fine. And I won't get cross. I mean, people can say exactly what they like, and I will just keep on saying to myself, well, they're reading it in the wrong order.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. It's the wrong time.
If only they'd read this after they'd read Jane Eyre, then they would.
Yeah.
And it's not my fault at all.
No.
But it's also perfectly right that we don't have to like everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's not something's fault that we don't necessarily. It could be because it's crap. It could, but somebody probably likes it.
Yeah.
And as I say, no one dies because of it. Doesn't matter if every single person in the world hates one book.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. We haven't got to execute the author. I mean, depends upon the author.
Yeah.
I think you're safe though.
Yeah.
I don't
you'll
think
be
you're
Yeah,
right.
fine.
well, hopefully. Well, as you say, I mean, you haven't read Jubilee yet. It's different to Chimes, but
It's
yeah,
very,
it's fine.
very, very different to Chimes.
It's very different to
Yeah.
Chimes. It's a much more brittle book. But yeah,
I'm excited
yeah.
to crack into it.
Thank
I
you.
will
Yeah.
literally be. Yeah, it's arriving tomorrow in the
Yeah.
post, so I'm going to be waiting at
Straight
the
in there.
door.
Yeah, I'm hoping some more arrive for me, but yes, I'm very much looking forward to tomorrow. I'm very excited by it, but yeah,
No, I'm looking forward to it for you to
Hmm.
and
thank you. Yeah,
have that
yeah, it's going to
moment
be a
to
good
breathe.
feeling when it's actually out in the shops, and seeing him in the shops is always exciting as well. You
Yeah.
go, there I
That's
am, and then
mine.
you start saying, oh, there are not that many of them, and then you start saying, no, they've all disappeared now. No one's, and then you realise that they've all been pulped. That's just me being on my miserable trend towards total anonymity. It'll be exciting for a while. It'll be good.
So I put out a Twitter post saying they were coming on the pod, and if anyone had any questions, that they can comment them below, and we can ask them to you. So our first question: please ask about the Toclafane version of Dalek and how different it would have been.
Oh, quite different. Um, yeah, I wrote one episode. I wrote one draft with the Tocaphane. They weren't called Tocaphane at that point.
Right.
Russell, I went to Russell's house because I was really scared and I didn't know what to do when we lost the rights to the Daleks.
Yeah.
And Russell drew me this circle on a bit of paper and said, "That's the new villain." And I said, he said, "Well, I put a bit of shading in." He said, "It's a big metal ball." And I said, "Right." He said,
Right.
"What we're going to reveal is that that is the future of the human race, but they were the ones who killed everything, and that's what the Time War was. And they've killed all the Daleks as well. And the Doctor's never known what they are, and we're going to find out. But not in your episode. We'll find out at the end of the season." So he said, "I want this big mute ball." And I said, "Can I at least have it talk?" He said, "Oh, go on then." So I
Yeah.
wrote the ball was the child from the Holy Terror. And it's
uh,
fine. It's quite vicious, and it does certain things it later does in Sound of Drums.
Yeah.
So some of the ideas seem to have been kept,
Mhm.
but it's not great. I mean, it was fine. I think it would have been again. It's that sense I said to you ages ago now, but you think, oh, it's going to be a forgettable, mediocre episode, and it was fine, but it wouldn't have been, I think, particularly memorable.
Right.
Um, had some decent jokes in, and I kept some of them into Dalek anyway afterwards.
Yeah.
So it had a use.
Yeah.
I think doing that draft taught me that it was important to big up the characters around
Okay.
Monster as well,
Yeah.
because I was too much upon the Dalek as being the main focus. So I was able to do something else
Yeah.
around Staten as a result. But yeah, it's fine. I don't think that there is no alternate universe in which that was a better
Yeah.
ending.
uh-huh.
Hi Rob. As Dalek is one of my personal favourite Doctor Who episodes of all time, I have a
That's
question
nice.
to ask about the online game The Last Dalek. Would you consider it to be canon by having it set in an alternate timeline?
Yeah, if you like.
There
I,
you go.
I've actually never played it. As I say, Dalek for me isn't canon, so the last Dalek the game can be. I mean, in some ways, that helps. I'm not really a game. I was aware they were doing something, but they didn't obviously tell me about it. Because why would they? So, and I had a really crappy computer, so I couldn't really even. I don't really know what it was a sort of platform game, I think. But yeah, if you like,
Sure.
knock
um,
yourself down. Yeah. It's a better title, The Last
the
Dalek.
Last Dalek. I don't know.
Yeah.
Dalek is quite hard hitting though, isn't it? Like it
Yeah, no,
says
I do actually like the title Dalek. I mean, it wasn't my title.
no.
Um, I obviously, I agreed to it. They suggested it, and I said, "Oh yeah, that's good."
That's fine.
So it was Julie Gardner's idea.
Yeah.
Um, I had Creature of Lies was my title for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very good. I mean, because it wouldn't have sold anything. But I mean, it was quite fun. I mean, I just
Yeah.
didn't know. Eventually, they said, "Oh, that's not working." I said, Julie said, "How about we just call it Dalek?" And Russell said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, actually, it has an impact." And people have said to me for years that it spoils the surprise. And you think, not much of a surprise. I mean, we've
Yeah.
revealed the end of the previous episode, and we
Yeah.
want it'll be on the Radio Times cover. So I think it's quite a good title, Dalek.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. I mean,
Creature of
it's
Lies feels a very like Doctor Who-y title. That's
Yeah.
yeah. I
it.
mean,
Like,
that's what we all went for. I mean,
yeah,
the White Dead was the Crippingwell horror or something at one point.
yeah.
And again, Creature of Lies just felt like a good working title. But yeah, it's something that you call a Big Finish audio,
Yeah.
actually. That's what they were going for. They wanted something rightly a bit more dynamic than that. I mean, that's my long-winded answer
No,
is that
yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
I don't really know the game, but I think it has more canonical status than the episode that inspired it.
We have another one that isn't Doctor Who related.
Okay.
Harriet says, I dip in and out of We All Hear Stories in the Dark. I
Oh,
have
that's
no
kind.
idea how much I've read or have yet to, or if I will miss a story. Did you make a flowchart for all the possible orders of reading? And why did you pick the kind of Decide Your Destiny format within 3 volumes?
Well, I probably covered that a bit, and I really wanted
Yeah.
that sense of. Um, but yeah, the flowchart. Not really. The problem with the flowchart is that it would take more space than you can. I mean, because of the number of permutations, you can't actually do it because it would be infinite. It's not infinite, but it's huge.
Yeah.
But you can still write. I mean, what I did is that you have each story has to have 5 stories going in and 5 stories coming out. So I devised and I had to work out what they would be emotionally.
Yeah.
So that took a while to do, but yeah, but text written down, I've got them all in a sort of chart. And that changed a lot as the course of writing the book. I mean, the thing is, as you wrote the book, you then realise, oh, I don't like story 74 anymore. I've got another story 74, but that changes the order of the map. So I'm
Yeah.
now going to write a story which can not only be a completely new story, but also still not break the structure of what I'm trying to do there. Because if that goes, then that goes. And so, yeah, I mean, yes, simple answer. I mean, I spent a lot of time on that, but it was also part of the game of it, really.
Yeah.
It sounds like such a
It was a laugh.
like a
You-
headache.
It's the sort of thing that isn't really part of writing a book. And I would tell people about it as I was doing it, and they just sort of like, well, why? I had a meeting with a publisher, which was really nice. They wanted to, bless them, they wanted to maybe commission a novel from me, which was really sweet. And I just sat there and said, well, I'm writing this big short story collection. I'll be free in a couple of years. And they said, well, I said, I'm about 5 years in. Another couple and I'll be done. They said, what? And I said, yeah, it's this big labyrinth. And the publisher just said to me, very nice, she said, but why would you do that? And I said, well, it's not really been done before. She said, well, maybe there's a good reason for it. And that is, I think, a reasonable point to make. But having done it, I'm really proud I did. But I don't know that it's really changed the world that I did it. I mean, I am very proud of it, though.
I was going to say, yeah, that's a massive achievement,
Achievement, yeah.
and even just in
And,
itself,
and,
like,
and
oh, that's
yeah, yes. I mean, it was one of those sort of things that I just felt. I just turned 40 when I began it. And I just thought, I really feel if I'm ever going to do this thing that's been in my head for a few years, now is the time. And having done it, I can now realise if I wouldn't start it now.
No.
I'd got other projects. So it was the right time to do a really weird project that I'm happy exists. And if nothing else, again, very morbid, but once I'm dead and everything, it's something that I feel is a statement of intent that I did it.
Yeah.
And that's not true for most things you end up writing. But I think whatever else that is, that book says something about why I wrote something, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just saying how much they love Dalek and how much they love you.
Oh, that's really nice.
Read some of those. Read some of
Yeah,
those.
read all of them.
You the other ones where they just say, just tell them we don't like them.
No, we had none of those.
Okay, that's good.
So I've got one last question.
Okay.
That is actually a question. Someone said, ask Shearman about the novelisation of Black Orchid he wrote as a teen and his favourite colour.
My favourite colour. Oh. Well, the Black Orchid thing is weird. I was probably 12. I found it in the attic recently, or recently-ish, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I just thought no one's ever going to write a novelisation of this because it's a two-parter.
Mm.
And so I did, and I used all the dialogue, but I also put in a lot of my own stuff.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I gave Adric a kind of strange love affair with Lady Cranley. I think because I had a crush on Barbara Murray, and I saw myself as Adric anyway, because I was, a young spotty kid. So yeah, there's a sort of strange. It's Black Orchid with this strange also fetishization of older women, um, which has always been my life, really. Yeah, I mean, I'm not embarrassed by it. I mean, obviously, I hope that Audio Go at some point will say, well, let's have another Black Orchid and let's just use your book. And I'll
Yeah.
say, it's ready to go. I
Yeah.
mean, it is the worst thing ever written. I also began an Earth. I only got through episode 1 of Earthshock. I did realise doing Earthshock, this is going to happen anyway. I did try doing Earthshock, but Black Orchid I did finish, and there's a lot of it. I mean, it's quite a big book.
Yeah.
I mean, much bigger than Black Orchid you'd think deserves. I'm sure that someone actually genuinely likes Black Orchid, but I still think, I'm not really sure that, that this really deserves this sort of amount of investigation into Lady Cranley's feelings for Adric. But yeah, it was
Oh.
happy memories.
Yeah.
My favourite colour.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have one. I mean, I tend to wear quite like, I don't know, that's blue.
Okay.
I'm
There we
not
go.
wearing blue. I think blue's a nice colour.
There we go.
Blue's nice.
Favourite
Oh.
colour, blue.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I wish I had something more interesting to say about
Yeah,
colours.
no. Completely
Um,
fine.
Yeah, I don't wear blue very often. I think I have to save myself up for blue.
Yeah.
I often wear pinks. They don't suit
Lovely.
me at all. I just have lots of shirts. Salmon. I
Salmon.
wear salmon. Yeah, I've got a salmon. No, I've got a t-shirt.
No.
Anyway, yes.
Well, to finish off, I've got a couple of quick fire questions.
All right.
I mean, actually, just before that, just because I've got to ask, in terms of coming back to Doctor Who in some form, I know obviously these novelisations are, well, at this point not even
Yeah.
out. Do you think you'd ever dip your toe back in? Not necessarily with the
don't
TV
know. I mean,
world or like Big Finish
maybe.
or novels or
I mean, it was fun to come back and do the books. So, I mean, I'd happily consider. I mean, I don't think I'd ever do TV again, Doctor Who, because I just think I haven't had a TV experience particularly. I mean, Dalek was my last script with my name on.
yeah.
I did other, so they would never have me back, and they'd be right not to. I'm not an experienced TV writer, but yeah, I mean, I'm not against the idea of doing some Big Finish again at some point, especially now in a funny way that we're back into another interregnum. It'd be quite fun, maybe. But I also, again, I don't know. It's an ego thing in part. I'd like if I came back for it to have an impact.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why it should do, and I know that. So my own sense of the reality of it weighs against my ego. If I came back, I'd want it to be like this blows Chimes of Midnight out of the water and becomes the biggest thing ever, and everybody adores it.
Yeah.
The reality is that they produce, it seems to me, like 17 new stories a day, and I would come back and everyone would say, "Oh, that's nice," and then I'd be disappointed,
Right.
and that would be a perfectly valid response. But I'd want to be king of the world,
Yeah.
and yet at the same time, I'm aware I can't be. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I do get asked
Mm.
once in a while. I mean, Big Finish, and I mean, I'm very close friends with them, and I think that because the books were coming out, there's an awakened interest in chatting to me, maybe because I get that sense. That doesn't mean I think I should do it. I will wait and see.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a sort of big prevaricatory answer, but I don't.
No, that's. I mean, I've got to ask because
No, sure, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I mean,
you know,
and it's what I would ask. I always said to my, anyone that I knew who wrote Doctor Who years and years ago, I would never have understood why they didn't want to carry on. I mean, if I'd met Robert Holmes, mind you, he did write to the end, as it turns out, but when he'd stopped, I'd have said, but why didn't you want to do any more? And he'd say, I'd imagine, I'm now inventing Robert Holmes. He'd say, well, I've other things I want to write.
yeah,
And I remember as a young fan, I'd be offended if I saw Robert Holmes's name on a Juliet Bravo episode. I think, well, why are you doing that? Why aren't you writing more Doctor Who?
Yeah.
uh-huh.
And and I understand when fans will say to me, um, they'll say, well, we don't really care about the fact you're doing your weird short story stuff. You could have written this number of Big Finish audios in that time rather than doing that, and we'd have rather that. And I think I get that in the same way that I remember feeling slightly miffed when Douglas Adams did Dirk Gently and not Hitchhiker. I thought, well,
Mm.
don't do that. I want you to be doing more Hitchhiker. But I also sort of feel that you kind of need to be doing what it is that your imagination tells you you should be doing. And
Absolutely.
I'm not always sure I've got a Doctor Who brain all the time. Doctor Who puts things back in the box.
Yeah.
I quite like destroying them a lot now, which is what the short stories do.
Yeah.
Mm.
You have to, if I could do Doctor Who where you didn't have to fit in with other things around it, but that's really arrogant. And it really also, the whole point about Doctor Who is you're playing in a wonderful sandbox and
Yeah.
you're sharing it. And I'd be now the annoying kid who wants to take all the sand. But I just think for my own sake, I think that I'm aware of my own selfishness. I think
Mm.
I'd be quite a selfish Doctor Who writer.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I won't though, because it, there is an itch,
Yeah,
you know. And people are always so kind about my Doctor Who, so as the years go by, you just think, well, who am I? Who am I? You know, what am I trying to prove to myself by not doing another?
yeah.
So perhaps
Right.
I will.
I mean, regardless, I'm just looking forward to seeing whatever's next from you,
Well, thank you very
Doctor Who or
much.
otherwise.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's very
Yeah,
kind. Thank you.
just please keep writing.
Oh, I've no choice. It's not the only
Yeah.
way I ever get. So I have to do it. There's also anything I can actually do. I can't do anything else at all well, and arguably not even writing half the time. So I could barely cook. I can't do anything really. So yeah,
Well, I think you've done pretty well so far
Yeah.
on the writing. I
thank
think
you.
the cooking and things can
Yeah.
Yeah,
That doesn't matter.
they're not important, are they?
no, not that. I don't think so.
So I've got a couple of quick fire questions just to finish up.
Okay,
Very, it might be fun if it's just literally off the cuff first answer that comes to your head.
let's just do it.
There's a couple of Doctor Who related ones, but it's a few more general.
Okay,
So, favorite film of all time?
Purple Rose of Cairo, Woody Allen.
Favorite song?
Might be Chemo Limo by Regina Spektor. There we are.
Okay.
That's obscure, but that's a good song.
Favorite book?
Flaubert's Parrot by Julian Barnes. I'm just off the cuff. I mean,
Yeah.
there might be things I'd now argue with, but these are genuine things I love. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then a couple of Doctor Who ones. Favorite Doctor?
Troughton.
I was going to say, I think we already.
But also new series Capaldi.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Love. Yeah.
Favorite companion?
I suppose Sarah Jane Smith.
Oh nice.
Everyone says that, but yeah, but she's amazing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did once write a letter to Elizabeth Sladen asking her to ditch her husband and run off with me. Actually, genuinely, I interviewed her for my fanzine,
Uh-huh.
and I was 13. And she bought me and my friend Owen, who were interviewing her, a pizza at Covent Garden, and I just fell for her. And I wrote to her and just said, "Thank you so much for the. I don't mind doing a different voice, but I will. Thank you so much for the interview. If you, I know I'm too young at the moment, but would you consider in the future maybe leaving your husband?" And I put brackets Brian Miller from Snake Dance, as if she wouldn't know that he'd been in Snake Dance or that her husband was Brian Miller. And
Incredible.
and then I got to know Liz a bit as the years went by. Partly because of Scarborough, because of Alan Ayckbourn. I first met her at Alan Ayckbourn's 60th back in '99. And of course, I didn't mention Doctor Who to her. And then years later, she found out I was on Doctor Who, and she always assumed when we'd meet that I wasn't really a Doctor Who fan. I was just a writer who'd done it.
Yeah.
So she would always kind of, and I would tell her, but she just wouldn't accept it. And then years later, I was at a convention. It was Gallifrey in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, and she came up to me and said, "Is it true, Rob? Did you once write a letter to me? Did you write the letter to me asking me to leave?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Oh," she said, "bless." And then she went. And
Oh,
actually,
bless
sadly,
her.
and I never saw her again. But
Oh.
it was heartbreaking, but also, yeah. But yes, so yeah, I'd have to say Sarah Jane Smith.
Yeah.
It's got to be Sarah J.
Yeah.
And I bet David Walliams didn't get a pizza with his fanzine interview.
He probably did actually. Probably could get up with anybody if he wanted to. But no, his fancy was rubbish. And he used to be told that time key. I've still got a copy of it. Yeah. Dreadful,
Oh, well,
awful.
final question.
Okay,
Favorite Doctor Who story of all time?
it's Snake Dance.
Okay.
It's the
Uh-huh.
Peter Davison. Yeah, no one ever reacts to that with the "of course." It's a story which just means so much to me. I mean, it's the first. I was 13. It was the first time I was on the cusp of wanting to be a writer, I think. And it was the first time I ever saw a Doctor Who story go out where I just noticed the script and noticed how skillful it was and noticed how great the character dialogue was. And there's a bit where Tanner, Lon's mother, is just talking about her husband, and how he wasn't amused at a reason. And she said, even then. And that just saying even then suddenly gave me this echo about this strange way that this marriage had never had really any emotion to it, even back when it was tone. It was such and I don't know why, but that really struck me. And I've always tried to put even then moments in my scripts. And I met Christopher Bailey. I was talking about this at one of the DVD extras years ago, and I was chatting about that, probably about the even then moment. And this man came up to me at the end, and he was in the room, and he just said, "Is any of that true?" And I said, "Oh, it's all true. I mean, absolutely." He said, "Oh, I'm Chris Bailey." And we sat down, and they filmed us. I mean, it was very impromptu. It's an Easter egg on the DVD. They just filmed us just chatting because I was just so thrilled to meet him.
Yeah.
And yeah, Snake Dance for so many reasons. I don't think it's the best Doctor Who story ever made. I don't think it's the best. It's the one that made me. It's the one that changed my life a bit.
Yeah.
And I still think it's really scary and clever. And it's actually like Jubilee. It's about someone subverting an anniversary, which is, and they did it for the 20th. And here I was, doing it 20 years later for Jubilee in a very different way. But no, I think Snake Dance. I mean, if there's also things like Heaven Sent is an extraordinary, but I think World Enough and Time
Yeah.
blew me away. I mean, there are so many episodes I dearly, dearly love, and in many ways would rather see. But Snake Dance is probably the one that,
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
I think sometimes it is,
Your
I mean,
comfort, isn't it?
yeah,
Comfort,
I mean, we spoke a few weeks back about, how your favourite episode isn't necessarily the best episode,
No.
or like
Yeah.
there's objective, and then, every so often you'll get that one that just
This
clicks.
is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the one that actually makes you, that, as you say, you can sense your life changing a bit around it,
Yeah.
and changing what you want to be when you're an adult and stuff. So yeah, I love Snake Dance. So there we are, and I'm unapologetic about it,
Good.
As you should be.
Quite right.
as I should be.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's really lovely. Well, what a lovely note to end on.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I
No,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
this. And yeah, thank you for it. Feels like a real celebration, that you're doing this the day before. Oh, the books,
There you are.
Here they
the other Jubilee, and yeah, there we are. But yes, thank you
Love it.
so much.
No,
Thanks
thank you for coming
thanks
on.
for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your day to speak to
Yeah.
us.
Not at all. No, I best be getting on. I suppose I should. It's because I did promise I would get some work done. But thank you.
Gorgeous. Well, thank you
you so
so
much.
much. I hope you have a lovely evening, and
Yeah.
best of luck with the launch tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be just me sitting on the computer watching as people just say, I've got the books. That'll be it. That'll be my day.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, make sure you got a nice cup of tea or something to
I will.
read as you go. But yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Speak to you again.
So there we are. That was our interview/chat with Rob Shearman. It was an absolute joy to speak with him. He's such a lovely guy and just an absolute legend. The novelisations of The Chimes of Midnight and Jubilee are out now. They're amazing. Go and buy them, read them. You will not regret it. We will be back next week, well, in a few days even, for our regularly scheduled pod episode. We're going to be joined by the great Jack Alexander, or Jack Alexander the Great, to talk about Doctor Who's Greatest Monsters, continuing our spooky Halloween season. That was another great chat, lots of fun, so definitely come join us for that one. In the meantime, you can find Kat on Twitter and Instagram at simplykatie_XO, and me on Twitter at CernBiscuit, or on the CernBiscuit YouTube channel, which you may very well be listening to or watching this podcast on right now. Thank you very much for joining. We will see you next week. Cheers.